When a woman says she's being followed, the world asks for proof. When she has proof, the world asks why she didn't leave sooner. When she leaves,
I
the
promise
world
to
asks
stand
why
by
she's so
you
dramatic.
through every
This is Sarah
challenge
Mitchell's
and every
story, and the
triumph.
story of every woman who's been
You
told
are
her
my
fear
rock.
isn't enough. Most people see the leather, the patches, the reputation, and they cross the street. But there's a code in the world of riders that outsiders never see. A code about protecting the defenseless, about handling problems that cops can't touch. On a cold November night in 2023, a terrified waitress was about to discover that code firsthand. She'd been stalked for 3 weeks. The police told her to be careful. Her boss told her to ignore it. But when she whispered to the woman in booth 9, that woman didn't tell her anything. She just looked at her with eyes that understood. What happened in the next hour would change both their lives and maybe make you see strength in a completely different light. The Crossroads Diner sat on Route 44 in eastern Pennsylvania, one of those classic American roadside places with red vinyl booths, a jukebox that still played actual records, and a neon sign out front that had been flickering the same way since 1987. The chrome-edged counter had seen a million elbows, a million cups of coffee, a million stories. It wasn't fancy. The tiles were chipped, the ceiling fans wobbled, and the coffee was just okay. But people came back. On this particular Tuesday night, the diner had that hollow feeling that comes with fluorescent lights and empty booths. 11:30, and the dinner rush had died hours ago. 4 customers total. An elderly couple finishing their pie in booth 2. A truck driver gulping coffee at the counter. A woman alone in booth 9, methodical with her meal, leather jacket draped over the seat back, and him. Ryan Walsh, 34 years old, dark hair, unremarkable features, sitting in booth 4 with barely touched food and manic energy radiating off him in waves. His leg bounced under the table. He kept checking his phone, typing something, deleting it, typing again. Every few seconds, his eyes would track across the diner to the young woman behind the counter, Sarah Mitchell, 23, with tired eyes that still managed to sparkle when she smiled. 3 years working this shift, 5 p.m. to midnight, Tuesday through Saturday, putting herself through community college, early childhood education, dreaming of being a kindergarten teacher, working a second job at a dry cleaner 6 a.m. starts, catching the last bus home after her shift here, waking up at dawn to do it all again. She was the kind of person who remembered your coffee order after meeting you once. She'd ask about your grandkids, your bad knee, whether that job interview went well. In a world that moves too fast, Sarah made people feel seen. The regulars loved her for it. Old Mr. Harrison came in every Thursday, sat in booth 3, ordered the meatloaf special, and left a $5 tip on a $7 check. He'd tell Sarah about his late wife, show her photos on his phone, and Sarah would listen like she had all the time in the world. Maria, the nurse who worked night shifts at County General, would stop in after her rounds and bring Sarah homemade tamales on holidays. They'd talk about Maria's daughter, who was Sarah's age, about dreams and struggles and the price of textbooks. These people were more than customers. They were the family Sarah had built in this place, the community that made the long shifts and aching feet worth it. They knew about her classes, her plans to be a teacher, the apartment she was saving for. They knew she took the last bus home and walked 3 blocks in the dark. They worried about her. But worrying wasn't the same as protecting. And tonight, Sarah needed protection. Tonight, she felt like prey. Ryan Walsh had been coming to the Crossroads for 3 weeks. Every night she worked. At first, booth 9 in the back. Then booth 5, closer to the counter. Then booth 4, where he could watch her move through the entire dining room. Coffee and burger, same order, same routine. Staying until midnight when her shift ended. Watching. That prickle on the back of your neck when you know someone's eyes are on you. Sarah had felt it for 21 nights straight. The first week, she'd told herself she was being paranoid. He was just a regular customer. Plenty of people came in at the same time every week. But by the second week, she couldn't ignore it anymore. The way he'd arrive within 5 minutes of her shift starting. The way his eyes tracked her from table to table. The way he'd smile when she looked his way. Like they were sharing some secret she hadn't agreed to. Week 2. Wednesday night. She'd seen his car for the first time. That dark blue Honda Civic with the dented rear bumper, parked at the far edge of the lot where the floodlight didn't quite reach. She'd finished her shift, started walking to the bus stop, and heard the engine start. Watched in the reflection of the diner's windows as the car pulled out and crept along behind her, 20 feet back, close enough that she knew he was there, far enough that he could claim coincidence. She'd reached the bus stop with her heart hammering against her ribs. The car had pulled into the gas station across the street and waited, engine running. When the bus came, she'd looked back through the rear window and seen the Honda pull out, following the bus for 3 stops before turning off. That night, she'd called her best friend Jenny. "I think someone's following me." Jenny had asked if he'd threatened her, if he'd touched her. When Sarah said no, Jenny had told her she was probably overthinking it. Guys can be weird, just ignore him. She'd told her manager Frank. He'd said customers were allowed to look. She'd filed a police report. Officer Chen had been sympathetic but clear. No threats, no touching, no approach outside the restaurant. Technically, no laws broken. Document and call if it escalates. Escalates, as if escalation wasn't already happening. As if the dark blue Honda Civic that followed her bus 3 nights a week wasn't escalation. As if him moving his car to block the bus stop tonight wasn't escalation. Sarah's hands trembled as she refilled the truck driver's coffee. Through the front windows, she could see Ryan's car parked directly under the streetlight, right in front of where the bus would stop. Impossible to miss. He'd abandoned all pretense. Tonight, he wanted her to know he was waiting. Wanted her to know there was no escape. Her manager Frank had left early. Something about his kid's school play. Carlos was in the kitchen, 67 years old, would leave through the back when his shift ended at midnight. Sarah would be alone to lock up, alone to walk past that car, alone with whatever Ryan had been working himself up to for 3 weeks. This was how it happened, she realized. This was how women ended up on the news. Everyone asking why didn't she do something? Why didn't she get help? As if she hadn't tried. As if the system hadn't failed her at every turn. Then she saw the woman in booth 9. 20 years earlier and 200 miles north, another young woman had learned the same lesson about systems that fail. Rachel Rivers, 21 years old, University of Pittsburgh, spring semester junior year. Studying to be a teacher, living in a small apartment 3 blocks from campus, trying to make rent by working weekend shifts at a bookstore. Thomas Wade had been in her statistics study group. Quiet guy, a little awkward, but seemed harmless enough. After the semester ended, he'd asked her out. She'd politely declined. She wasn't interested, had a lot going on, maybe another time. The usual soft no that women are taught to give. He didn't hear it. First came the texts, 20, 30, 40 a day. Then he started showing up places. The library where she studied, the coffee shop where she grabbed breakfast, the bookstore where she worked, always with an excuse. Just happened to be in the neighborhood. Thought he'd say hi. Wondering if she'd changed her mind about that date. She told her friends. They said he was just persistent. She told campus security. They said they'd look into it. She called her brother Marcus Marine Corps, deployed in Iraq for his second tour. He said he'd be home in 2 months, told her to stay with friends until then, to be careful. Be careful. As if being careful would stop someone who decided you were his. 3 months of this. 3 months of looking over her shoulder, of changing her routine, of carrying pepper spray and keeping her phone charged. 3 months of people telling her she was overreacting. Until the night he broke into her apartment. 2 a.m. She woke to a sound, that animal instinct that tells you something's wrong. Opened her eyes to see him standing over her bed. "I just want to talk. You won't talk to me anywhere else. Just give me a chance." The next 60 seconds would define the rest of her life. She could have frozen. She could have tried to reason with him. She could have screamed and hoped someone heard. She grabbed the kitchen knife she'd been sleeping with under her pillow for 2 weeks. The knife she told herself she was being paranoid about. The knife that saved her life. The fight was ugly and desperate. 3 broken ribs, fractured wrists, 3 jagged lines across her forearm where the blade had cut her instead of him in the struggle. But she'd fought him off, kept fighting, kept the knife between them until she heard the most beautiful sound of her life. Someone kicking in her door. Carlos Martinez, 62 at the time, had been making a late-night delivery to the restaurant 2 blocks over, parked his truck in the alley behind her building, heard her scream through an open window. He didn't call the police first. He didn't film it on his phone. He kicked in the door, pulled Thomas' weight off her, held him down until the sirens came. By the time the police arrived, Rachel was bleeding and shaking but alive. Carlos gave a statement, checked that she'd be okay, and disappeared into the night. The name on the police report was wrong. The address didn't exist. The phone number was disconnected. Rachel would spend 20 years trying to find him to say thank you. She never would. Not until it was almost too late. But in that hospital bed, with 3 stitches in her arm and trauma counselors telling her to process her feelings, Rachel made a decision. She started paying attention, started listening to other women's stories, started seeing the pattern. Thomas Wade had stalked 2 women before her at 2 different universities. Both had reported him. Both had been told there wasn't enough evidence. He'd simply moved to a new school, found a new target, started fresh. The system hadn't failed. The system had never been designed to protect her in the first place. So Rachel built her own system. Back in the Crossroads Diner, present day, Sarah Mitchell's chest felt tight, her breathing shallow. Ryan's car was right there. Carlos would leave through the back. The bus stop was 100 yards away in the darkness, and Ryan would be waiting. She scanned the diner one more time. The elderly couple was gathering their things. The truck driver was absorbed in his phone, and the woman in booth 9. Sarah had noticed her earlier in the week, maybe 3 or 4 times, always alone, always in the same booth or nearby. Leather jacket, confident posture, something about her presence that made people give her space. Not threatening, just certain, like she knew exactly who she was and didn't need to prove it. Tonight, that woman was watching Sarah with an expression that made Sarah's breath catch. Recognition, understanding. The look of someone who'd been exactly where Sarah was standing. Desperation makes you reach for unlikely saviors. And right then, unlikely was all Sarah had. She walked to booth 9, coffee pot in hand even though the woman's cup was still full. Leaned down closer than she'd normally get to any customer. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. "Excuse me, I'm so sorry to bother you, but that man over there, he's been following me for weeks. He waits for me, follows me to the bus. I don't know what to do. Please." The woman didn't respond with words immediately. She simply looked at Sarah, really looked at her, with eyes that had seen this exact fear before. Then she did something Sarah hadn't expected. She rolled up her left sleeve. 3 jagged scars, faded but unmistakable, ran across her forearm. "I was you," the woman said quietly. 20 years ago, I was exactly you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. The woman extended her hand. "I'm Rachel, and you're not alone anymore." Rachel Rivers was 41 years old now. She'd spent 2 decades building something that existed in the shadows because the light of legality wouldn't let it function. A network of survivors and allies who believed women before the system required proof. She'd started small, a private online group for survivors in Pennsylvania, sharing information, photos, license plates, behavior patterns, warning each other about men who moved from city to city, leaving frightened women in their wake. The group grew. 300 members in 2 years, 17 states in 5 years. But information alone wasn't enough. Knowing a predator existed didn't stop him. That's when Rachel reached out to her brother Marcus. He'd come home from Iraq a different man, carrying weight that had nothing to do with muscle. The guilt of being overseas when his sister nearly died. The rage at a system that had let it happen. He'd found brotherhood in a motorcycle club, men who lived by a code that said strength exists to defend the defenseless. Rachel asked if his brothers would help. Not with violence. Violence made you the criminal, gave them ammunition. But presence, protection, being the deterrent that police couldn't be. Marcus brought it to his chapter. The vote passed. Within a year, chapters in 6 other states had signed on. Within 5 years, 17 states, over 400 writers. They called it the Silent Watch. No website, no social media presence, no publicity. Just survivors sharing information, and writers ready to respond when that information indicated imminent danger. Rachel had received the alert about Ryan Walsh 2 days ago. Known offender, relocated to the area, pattern established. Amanda Torres, Albany, New York, 2019, restraining order. Nicole Chen, Portland, Oregon, 2021. Stalking charges dropped after he moved. A third woman in Seattle who'd never filed formal charges, but shared her story in Rachel's network. The alert had come from one of Rachel's contacts in Oregon. Ryan had applied for an apartment, background check had been run, and someone in the property management office was part of the network. She'd seen his name, cross-referenced it with the database Rachel maintained, found the matches. Within 2 hours, Rachel had his new address, his employment history, his vehicle registration. This was how the network worked, not through hacking or illegal surveillance, but through women in positions to notice things sharing information that could save lives. Court clerks who recognized names from restraining orders, apartment managers who remembered problem tenants, women who worked at DMVs, at banks, at places where paper trails existed and people paid attention. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't official, but it had saved 200 women over the past 15 years. 200 women who never had to learn what it felt like to be hunted. Rachel had been checking diners and late-night spots along Route 44, places where a man like Ryan would hunt for vulnerable women who worked alone. Gas stations, convenience stores, 24-hour laundromats, any place where a woman might be isolated and accessible. When she'd walked into the Crossroads 3 nights ago and seen him watching the young waitress with that methodical intensity, she'd known. It wasn't just the watching, it was the body language, the way he sat angled toward her even when looking at his phone, the way his leg bounced with barely contained energy, the way he tracked her movements like a predator calculating distance. She texted Marcus, found him, the Crossroads Diner, waitress named Sarah, he's already locked on. Marcus had asked if she wanted him there. Rachel had said not yet. Let her ask first. If she reaches out, we move. If she doesn't, we find another way. But I'm not leaving her alone with him. Now, sitting across from Sarah in booth 9, Rachel pulled out her phone. I'm going to make a call, Rachel said. Then we're going to deal with this. But first, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail, every time he followed you, every moment you felt unsafe. Can you do that? Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face now. Good, sit down. Sarah slid into the booth across from Rachel. For the first time in 3 weeks, she felt something other than fear. She felt believed. Rachel listened for 10 minutes as Sarah talked. Every night Ryan came in. Every time his car followed her bus. The police report that went nowhere. The manager who dismissed her. The friends who said she was overreacting. When Sarah finished, Rachel's jaw was tight. She'd heard this story 100 times before. Different names, but same pattern. The system waiting for violence before it would act. Rachel pulled up a contact on her phone. Her brother answered on the first ring. I need you, Rachel said. The Crossroads, now. Marcus didn't ask questions. 20 minutes, he said. Rachel looked at Sarah. Do you want him arrested, scared off, or do you want him to actually change? Sarah blinked. What? Rachel leaned forward. That man's name is Ryan Walsh. He's stalked at least 3 women before you. Probably more. He moves cities when things get hot, finds new victims, starts over. The legal system can't stop him because he's learned exactly where the line is and how to stay just on the right side of it. So I'm asking what you want. We can make him leave tonight, disappear, and never come back. But he'll just find another woman in another city. Or we can try something different, something harder. We can give him one chance to actually face what he's done and change. No guarantees it'll work. But if it does, you might save the next woman. Sarah looked over at Ryan, still sitting in booth 4, still watching her, even though she was across from Rachel now. What happens if he doesn't change? Then everyone knows what he is, Rachel said. His face, his name, his history goes public. Every woman in every city he's ever lived in gets warned. He won't be able to hide anymore. Sarah thought about Amanda Torres and Nicole Chen and the woman in Seattle. Thought about the next Sarah Mitchell who wouldn't see him coming. I want him to change, Sarah whispered. If that's even possible. Rachel nodded. Then trust me, and when things get intense, remember that you're not alone. You're surrounded by people who believe you. 15 minutes later, the door to the Crossroads Diner opened. The small bell above it chimed, cheerful and incongruous with the tension filling the room. 3 people walked in. Marcus Rivers, 47, 6'3", leather vest covered in patches. Behind him, 2 other riders, a man and a woman, both wearing the same vest, the same insignia. The elderly couple in booth 2 quickly put money on their table and left, not making eye contact with anyone. The truck driver at the counter suddenly remembered he had somewhere to be. Carlos came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. saw the situation developing, walked over and stood beside Sarah at the counter. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "We're here." Marcus walked to booth 9, didn't sit, just stood there, making eye contact with Rachel. His sister nodded toward Ryan. "He's the one." Marcus looked at Ryan Walsh for a long moment. Ryan was still sitting, but his confident smile had faltered. 3 large people had just walked in, and they were clearly here for him. Rachel stood up from booth 9. "Sarah, stay here with Carlos. This won't take long." Rachel walked across the diner at a measured pace, not rushing, not aggressive, just steady. Marcus and the 2 other riders fanned out, covering angles, making sure Ryan couldn't bolt. When Rachel reached booth 4, she didn't ask permission. She simply sat down across from Ryan Walsh. The air in the diner changed. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum differently. For a moment, neither spoke. Rachel just looked at him, studied him the way you'd study an insect under glass. Ryan tried to hold his smile, but it was cracking at the edges. "You've been coming here 3 weeks," Rachel said. Her voice was low and even, barely above conversational tone. "Every night she works." Ryan shrugged, trying to look casual. "I like the food. It's a free country. I can eat where I want." "You follow her to the bus stop," Rachel continued. "You wait in your car. You drive behind the bus. That's not about food." Ryan's smile disappeared. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know who you think you are. But you can't just sit down and accuse me of anything." "I'm not accusing you," Rachel said. "I'm telling you what you've done, what you're doing, and what you were planning to do tonight." She gestured toward the window, toward the dark blue Honda Civic blocking the bus stop. "You moved your car front and center. You wanted her to see it, wanted her to know she can't get away. That's escalation, Ryan." Ryan's face went pale, not because of what Rachel said, but because of what came next. Rachel placed a tablet on the table between them, turned it so Ryan could see the screen. Ryan Walsh, 34 years old, Albany, New York, 2019. Amanda Torres took out a restraining order against you. Said you followed her for 2 months after she turned you down for a second date. Showed up at her work, sat outside her apartment. Ryan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Portland, Oregon, 2021, Rachel continued. Nicole Chen filed stalking charges against you. Dropped them 3 weeks later after you moved out of state. Seattle, Washington, 2017. Brianna Foster. She never filed charges, but she told her story. And we listened. How do you... There's no way you could know this. That information isn't public. Rachel leaned forward slightly. The temperature in the booth seemed to drop. We share information, Ryan. Women talk. We warn each other. You've been on our radar for 5 years. We tracked you here. We were waiting for you to pick your target. And the moment you did, we moved. Ryan was shaking now. This is illegal. You can't... So is stalking, Rachel said. But the law doesn't stop you. We will. Ryan looked past Rachel at Marcus standing 10 feet away, arms crossed. At the 2 other riders bracketing the booth. At Carlos and Sarah watching from the counter. "What do you want?" Ryan's voice came out thin and frightened. Rachel pulled up a video file on the tablet. Pressed play. 2 women appeared on screen, pre-recorded statements. Amanda Torres on the left, dark hair pulled back, glasses, reserved expression. Nicole Chen on the right, lighter hair, sitting cross-legged, nervous but determined. "Hello, Ryan," Amanda's recorded voice said. "It's been 5 years since you made my life a living nightmare. 5 years since I had to get a restraining order because you wouldn't accept that I didn't want to see you again. 5 years since I had to move, change my phone number, look over my shoulder every time I left my apartment. 3 years for me," Nicole's voice added. 3 years since you followed me for months. Since you showed up at my work, my gym, my friend's house. 3 years since I filed charges and then dropped them because my lawyer said it would be your word against mine, and I couldn't afford to lose. The video continued for 2 more minutes. Amanda and Nicole each describing specific incidents, specific ways Ryan had terrorized them, ways he'd stolen their peace, their safety, their ability to exist in the world without fear. When the video ended, Ryan was staring at the blank screen with tears running down his face. Rachel let the silence sit for a moment. "You have 1 choice, Ryan, not 2, 1. Ryan looked up at her. "You enter a treatment program, specialized therapy for stalking behavior. You check in with our network every week for 2 years. You provide proof of attendance, proof of progress. You face what you've done. You apologize to Amanda and Nicole, not through this screen, but in a real conversation where they get to decide if you're sincere. And if I don't, then the recording we're about to make of this conversation goes to every police department where you've lived. goes to social media, goes viral. Your face, your name, your pattern, everywhere. You won't be able to move to a new town and start over. Everyone will know what you are. Rachel pulled out her phone, opened the camera app. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to admit what you did to Sarah, to Amanda, to Nicole, to Brianna. You're going to explain why you did it. And you're going to commit to treatment. We record it. If you complete the program, we delete the recording. If you violate the terms or hurt another woman, the recording becomes public. Your choice, Ryan, but choose now. Ryan looked at Sarah across the diner, saw the fear in her eyes, saw what he'd done to her, looked at the tablet showing Amanda and Nicole's faces frozen on screen, saw what he'd done to them, looked at Rachel's unwavering gaze, saw someone who wouldn't let him hide anymore. Something broke in him, not the defensive anger, but the thing underneath, the small, frightened, lost part that had been running from itself for years. "I'm scared," he whispered. The words came out like a confession, like something he'd never admitted to anyone, maybe not even himself. "I'm always scared that I'm not good enough, that nobody will want me. And when someone is nice to me, when they smile or laugh at something I say, I convince myself it means more than it does. And then when they don't want me, when they make that clear, it feels like they're saying I'm worthless. And I can't handle that. So I keep trying. I keep showing up because if I can just make them see, make them understand, then maybe..." He stopped, looked at Rachel's face, saw not sympathy, but something harder, understanding without absolution. "I'm sorry," Ryan said. "I'm so sorry. I told myself I was just persistent, just showing I cared. But I was terrorizing them. I know that now. I knew it then, if I'm honest. I just couldn't stop." Rachel waited. "I want to get help," Ryan continued. "I want to stop being this person. I'll do the program. I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be different." Rachel pressed record on her phone. "Say it again. All of it. And this time say their names." For the next 30 minutes, Ryan Walsh confessed to everything. To following Amanda for months, to showing up at Nicole's friend's house, to sitting outside Brianna's work, to stalking Sarah for 3 weeks. He named what he'd done, admitted he'd known it was wrong, explained the twisted logic that had let him justify it. When he finished, Rachel stopped recording. "Your first therapy appointment is Monday morning at 9 a.m., she said. "Dr. Helen Keating, 3 towns over. She specializes in obsessive behavioral patterns. You'll check in with me every Sunday at 7 p.m. You'll show me attendance records, therapy notes, any urges or struggles. You'll do this for 24 months. If you complete it without violations, we delete this recording." Ryan nodded, face blotchy from crying. "And Ryan," Rachel added, her voice going even quieter, "I want you to understand something. This network doesn't sleep. We're in 23 states now, over 400 riders, over 200 survivors. If you slip even once, we'll know before the sun sets. This isn't a threat, it's a fact. We exist to protect women, and we'll be watching you for the rest of your life." Ryan nodded again. "You can leave now," Rachel said. "Get in your car, drive home, and when Monday comes, you show up for that appointment, because this is your only chance." Ryan stood on shaking legs, looked once more at Sarah, who was standing with Carlos at the counter, watching with wide eyes. "I'm sorry," Ryan said to her. "I'm so sorry." Then he walked out of the Crossroads Diner, got in his dark blue Honda Civic, and drove away into the November night. The moment his taillights disappeared, Sarah's legs gave out. Carlos caught her, helped her to the nearest booth. Rachel slid in across from her. "Is it over?" Sarah whispered. "Is he really gone?" "For tonight, yes," Rachel said. "And if he keeps his word, forever. But, Sarah, I need you to understand something." Sarah looked up, eyes red from crying. "What happened tonight, it's just the beginning, not the end. You're going to have hard days. You're going to wake up and wonder if he'll come back. You're going to look over your shoulder for months, maybe years. That's normal. That's what trauma does." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. "But you don't have to go through it alone," Rachel continued. She pulled a card from her pocket, wrote a number on it. "This is my personal cell. Text me every morning for the next week. Just 2 words. I'm okay. That's it. And when you're ready, not today, not next week, but when you're ready, I'm going to introduce you to some other women. Women who understand. Women who survived what you survived." Sarah took the card with trembling hands. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked. Why did you believe me when no one else did? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she rolled up her sleeve again, showing the 3 scars. Because 20 years ago, I was sitting where you are, and the system failed me. Everyone failed me. I almost died because no one took my fear seriously until it was almost too late. She looked Sarah in the eyes. I built the silent watch, so no other woman would have to feel that alone. So when you said you were scared, I didn't need proof. I believed you, because I remember what it feels like to not be believed, and I swore I'd never let another woman feel that way if I could help it. Sarah started crying again, but different tears now. Not fear, but relief. Not desperation, but hope. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing me. Rachel reached across the table, squeezed Sarah's hand once. You're not thanking me. You're joining us. There's a whole community of women who've been where you are, and we take care of each other. That's what the Silent Watch is. Not men on motorcycles saving helpless women, but women protecting women, with allies who know their place is behind us, not in front of us. Marcus had been standing back, letting his sister handle it. Now he approached the booth. Sarah, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man his size, we're going to follow your bus home tonight. Make sure you get in safe. You won't see us, but we'll be there. And tomorrow, Rachel's going to call you. After that, it's up to you what kind of help you want. But you're not alone anymore. Not tonight. Not ever again. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Carlos brought her a cup of tea she hadn't asked for, sat down next to her and just existed there, solid and present. The 2 other riders, the woman and man who'd come in with Marcus, took seats in nearby booths. No one spoke. They just stayed. At midnight, Sarah finished her shift, locked up the diner for the last time, her hands steadier than they'd been in 3 weeks. When she got to the bus stop, Ryan's car was gone, but Rachel's car was parked across the street. And when the bus came and Sarah got on, she saw a motorcycle pull out and follow at a discreet distance. She rode the bus to her stop, walked to her apartment building, got inside and locked the door, looked out the window and saw the motorcycle parked under a streetlight. The rider just sitting there, making sure she was safe. Sarah pulled out her phone and sent her first text to Rachel's number. I'm okay. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then Rachel's response. I know you are. Sleep well. Tomorrow we start healing. Sarah climbed into bed for the first time in 3 weeks without checking the locks 5 times, without keeping the lights on, without sleeping with her phone in her hand. Because for the first time in 3 weeks, she wasn't alone. 20 years ago, Rachel Rivers had survived an attack that should have killed her. In that hospital bed, broken and bleeding, she'd made a promise to herself. She would build something, a network that caught women before they fell, a system that believed fear before it required blood as proof. She'd kept that promise. The Silent Watch had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. 400 volunteers across 23 states, 200 women protected, 0 deaths. But it wasn't about the numbers. It was about nights like tonight, about looking into the eyes of a terrified young woman and being able to say the words Rachel had needed to hear 2 decades ago. I believe you. You're not alone. And we're going to make sure you're safe. That was the code. That was the promise. That was why the Silent Watch existed. Not to punish predators, though sometimes that happened. Not to replace the legal system, though sometimes it had to. But to do the one thing the system refused to do. Believe women before they had to prove their fear with scars. Sarah Mitchell would spend the next week texting those 2 words every morning. I'm okay. And every morning Rachel would respond, I know you are. On day 8, Sarah would text something different. I want to meet the other women. I want to help. And Rachel would smile because she recognized that moment. The moment when survival becomes purpose. When trauma transforms into strength. When a victim decides to become a protector. That was how the Silent Watch grew. Not through recruitment or advertising, but through women who'd been saved deciding to save others. Sarah didn't know it yet, but in 3 years she'd be running her own advocacy center. In 5 years, she'd testify before the state legislature. In 10 years, she'd have saved over 100 women, each one passing the torch to the next. But tonight, she just slept, deeply and dreamlessly for the first time in 3 weeks, because someone had believed her. And belief, it turned out, was the first step toward healing. The Crossroads Diner would open again tomorrow morning. New customers, new stories, new lives intersecting over coffee and pie. The neon sign would flicker the same way it had for 36 years. The tiles would still be chipped, the ceiling fans would still wobble. But something had changed, something invisible but profound. A woman had been in danger. A community had responded. And the system that should have protected her but didn't had been bypassed by something older and simpler. People who gave a damn. This is Sarah Mitchell's story, but it's also Rachel Rivers' story, and Amanda Torres' story, and Nicole Chen's story, and the stories of 200 other women whose names you'll never know because they never became statistics. This is the story of the Silent Watch. Not vigilantes or heroes or outlaws. Just people who decided that protecting the vulnerable mattered more than waiting for permission. And on a cold November night in 2023, in a diner on Route 44 in Pennsylvania, that decision saved a life. What happened next, the weeks and months and years that followed, would prove that survival is just the beginning. But it starts here, with a whisper, with belief, with a woman named Rachel who remembered what it felt like to be afraid and alone, and with another woman named Sarah, who learned that sometimes the angels wear leather jackets, and sometimes salvation comes not from the system, but from strangers who become sisters. The neon sign flickered, the coffee pot burbled, and somewhere in the darkness, women watched over women. That's the code, that's the promise, that's the silent watch. And this is only the beginning. The first night after trauma doesn't feel like victory. It feels like the floor dropping out from under you. Like realizing the danger you survived was so much worse than you let yourself believe while you were surviving it. Sarah Mitchell woke up at 3:17 in the morning, gasping for air, her heart trying to punch through her ribcage. The nightmare had been vivid and specific. Ryan's car blocking the bus stop, his face at her window, his hand on her door handle. Things that hadn't happened, but so easily could have. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand, hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to unlock it. Pulled up Rachel's number, typed out a message, deleted it, typed again. I'm not okay. The response came within 90 seconds. 3 dots dancing on the screen, then words. You don't have to be. Can I come over? Sarah looked around her studio apartment. Dishes in the sink from 3 days ago. Laundry piled on the chair. The life of someone who'd been too afraid to function. Too exhausted to care. It's messy. Rachel's response was immediate. I don't care about mess. I care about you. Address. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on Sarah's door. She checked the peephole, saw Rachel standing there with a grocery bag in one hand, and for the first time since waking from the nightmare, Sarah felt like she could breathe. Rachel came in without judgment, without that look people get when they see someone falling apart. She just set the bag on the small kitchen counter and started unpacking. Soup in a thermos, still hot. A box of chamomile tea. A soft blanket, the kind that weighs just enough to feel like a hug. Sit, Rachel said, and Sarah sat. Rachel made the tea, poured the soup into a bowl, brought both to Sarah on the couch. Then she sat in the chair across from her and just existed there. Present, solid, real. They didn't talk for almost 20 minutes. Sarah sipped the soup, wrapped herself in the blanket, felt her heart rate slowly return to something approaching normal. Rachel didn't check her phone, didn't look bored, didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless words. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice came out small and broken. I can't stop thinking about what could have happened. If you hadn't been there. If I'd walked out to that bus stop alone. Rachel leaned forward, elbows on her knees. But that didn't happen. You're here, you're safe. I feel so stupid, Sarah continued, the words tumbling out now, unstoppable, for not seeing it sooner, for being nice to him those first few nights, for not quitting my job and leaving town. Rachel's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went sharp and fierce. Stop. Right there. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. This is not your fault. Not for staying, not for being nice, not for existing in a space he had access to. You had bills, you had classes, you had a life, and you should not have to abandon your life because some man decided to terrorize you. But I should have known. Week 1, I felt something was wrong. You did know, Rachel said. That's your intuition. That's your body telling you danger is near, and you were right. But knowing someone is dangerous doesn't make it your responsibility to prevent them from being dangerous. That's on them. Women don't cause stalking by existing. Men cause stalking by choosing to obsess. Sarah started crying then. Not the panicked tears from earlier, but something deeper. Grief, maybe. Or release. The kind of crying that comes when someone gives you permission to stop holding everything together. Rachel moved to the couch, sat beside Sarah but didn't touch her. Waited for permission. Can you? Sarah gestured vaguely. Can you just? Rachel put an arm around Sarah's shoulders, and Sarah collapsed into it. Cried for 20 minutes straight, body shaking, years of holding it together finally breaking loose. Rachel just held her. Didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. Didn't say everything happens for a reason, because that's garbage when you're drowning. Just held space for the grief and fear and rage to exist without trying to fix it. When Sarah finally stopped, when the tears ran out and left her hollow and exhausted, Rachel spoke quietly. When I was in your place, everyone wanted me to move on, to get over it, to be grateful I survived. Like survival was supposed to be enough, like I should just be happy to be breathing and not ask for anything else. She paused, and Sarah could feel the weight of old pain in that silence. I'm not going to tell you to feel anything, Rachel continued. You feel what you feel. You're angry at yourself, fine. Be angry. You're scared, fine. Be scared. You're exhausted, fine. Rest. There's no timeline for this, no correct way to process trauma. You just have to feel it and keep breathing through it. Sarah pulled back, wiped her face with the blanket. How long did it take you to feel normal again? Rachel's smile was sad and honest. I'll let you know when it happens. 20 years later, I still have hard days. Still check locks twice. Still feel my stomach drop when I see someone who looks like him. But it gets different. You learn to carry it. It becomes part of your story, but not the whole story. Sarah nodded, too tired to speak. Rachel stood up, started gathering her things. I'm going to leave you to sleep. But before I go, I want you to write something down. You got a notebook? Sarah pointed to her backpack hanging on a chair. Rachel pulled out a spiral notebook, opened to a blank page, handed it to Sarah with a pen. Write this. Today I survived. That's it. Just that sentence. And tomorrow, if you wake up and you're still here, you write it again. Every day for the next week. You don't have to write anything else, just those 3 words. Why? Because right now survival is enough. Later, we'll work on thriving. But today, this week, this month, your only job is to keep surviving. And writing it down makes it real, makes it count. Sarah took the notebook, wrote the words in shaky handwriting. Today I survived. Rachel nodded approval. Good. Now try to sleep. Text me when you wake up. Just 2 words. I'm okay. Even if you're not okay, you text me anyway, because you're going to be okay eventually. And until then, you're not alone. After Rachel left, Sarah climbed back into bed with the blanket Rachel had brought. It smelled like lavender and something else, something that felt like safety. She fell asleep within minutes and didn't dream at all. The next 7 days followed a pattern. Sarah would wake up, text Rachel 2 words. I'm okay. Rachel would respond within minutes. I know you are. Then Sarah would write in the notebook. Today I survived. Some days, that was all she could manage. She called in sick to both jobs, skipped her classes, stayed in her apartment with the curtains drawn and the door triple locked. Other days, she forced herself to shower, to eat something other than crackers, to sit by the window and watch the world outside. People going about their lives, unaware that 3 blocks away, a young woman was learning how to exist again. On day 3, Maria from the diner showed up with a container of tamales and news that Frank had hired someone to cover Sarah's shifts. No pressure to come back, just rest. We're here when you're ready. On day 5, Mr. Harrison stopped by with flowers and a card signed by all the regulars. We miss you. Take your time. Your family. On day 8, Sarah texted Rachel something different. I want to meet them. The other women. I want to help. Rachel called within seconds. Her voice was warm and careful. You sure? It's only been a week. There's no rush. I'm sure, Sarah said. I can't just sit here anymore. If I'm going to survive this, I need to know I'm not alone. I need to see that other women made it through. There's a meeting on Thursday. Support group, monthly gathering. You don't have to talk. You can just listen. I'll be there. Thursday evening, Rachel picked Sarah up at 6:30. Drove her to a community center on the other side of town, a squat brick building with a parking lot half full of cars. How many women? Sarah asked as they walked to the entrance. Usually 10 to 15. Ages range from early 20s to late 60s. All survivors. All at different stages of healing. What if I cry the whole time? Rachel squeezed her shoulder. Then you cry. Half of them will be crying too. That's the point. You get to fall apart in a room where everyone understands why. The meeting room was small and warm, chairs arranged in a circle. Women were already arriving, greeting each other with hugs and quiet hellos. Sarah recognized something in their faces. A wariness, maybe. Or a strength that came from being broken and choosing to rebuild anyway. Dr. Helen Keating stood near the coffee pot, mid-50s with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. She was the facilitator, Rachel had explained. Trauma specialist who volunteered her time because she understood, because she'd been one of them once. Rachel introduced Sarah to a few women as they found seats. Jennifer, 45, mother of two, stalked by a coworker. Diane, 62, retired teacher, stalked by a student's father 15 years ago. Zoe, 28, college student, ex-boyfriend violating restraining order. Each woman looked at Sarah with recognition, not pity, understanding. Dr. Keating called the meeting to order with a simple opening. Welcome. In this room, your experience is valid. Your fear is real. Your healing is yours. We don't tell anyone how to feel or what to do. We just witness each other. That's enough. She looked around the circle. Who wants to start tonight? Jennifer raised her hand, and for the next 10 minutes, she talked about a hard week. Her stalker had been convicted 6 months ago, was in prison, but she still couldn't shake the fear. Still checked her car before getting in. Still made her kids text when they arrived at school. I thought I'd feel safe once he was locked up, Jennifer said. But I don't. I just feel broken, like he broke something in me that can't be fixed. Diane spoke next, her voice steady with age and wisdom. I was stalked 15 years ago. He eventually stopped on his own, moved on to easier prey probably. I never got justice, never got closure. And you know what I learned? Healing isn't about him. It's not about whether he's in prison or dead or reformed. It's about whether I'm okay. And most days I am. Some days I'm not. Both are fine. The conversation continued. Woman after woman sharing victories and setbacks. Someone had gone on a first date after 3 years of isolation. Someone else had a panic attack in the grocery store. Someone got a promotion at work. Someone couldn't get out of bed for a week. And nobody judged. Nobody said you should be over this by now. Nobody offered empty platitudes about time healing all wounds. They just listened, witnessed, believed. Halfway through the meeting, Dr. Keating looked at Sarah. You're new. Would you like to share or just listen tonight? Sarah's mouth went dry. She hadn't planned to talk, but looking around the circle at these faces, these women who knew, she found herself speaking. I'm Sarah. This happened 8 days ago. She told the story, the 3 weeks of stalking, the fear, the dismissal from her boss, from the police, from friends. The night Rachel sat down across from Ryan Walsh and made him face what he'd done. I feel so stupid, Sarah said and her voice cracked. For not leaving, for not fighting back, for being so scared. Jennifer leaned forward. You're not stupid. You were surviving. We're taught to be nice, to give men chances, to not make scenes. That's not your fault. That's conditioning. Diane added, her voice gentle but firm. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still blame myself sometimes. That voice never fully goes away. But we learn to talk back to it. We learn to say, it wasn't my fault. He chose to do this, not me. Zoe, the youngest in the room besides Sarah, spoke up. I'm still in it. Right now, my ex violated the restraining order again last week. And every day I wake up wondering if today's the day he escalates. So if you're stupid, then I'm stupid. But I don't think either of us are. I think we're just trying to survive. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Not healing, not yet, but hope. The possibility that maybe, someday, she could be like Diane, 15 years past it and mostly okay. After the meeting, women gathered around Sarah with phone numbers and offers of coffee. Amanda Torres, who'd driven 3 hours to be there, pulled Sarah aside. I heard your story. Rachel told me. I'm Amanda. Ryan stalked me 5 years ago. Sarah stared at her. You're the one from Albany. The restraining order. Amanda nodded. I want you to know something. You're going to be okay. Not today, but someday. And I'll help you get there if you want. We all will. Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah's world began to expand beyond her apartment and her fear. Amanda called twice a week just to check in. They met for coffee on week 3, and Amanda told her everything. The 2 years of therapy, the 3 apartments, the job changes, the breaking point when she'd stood in an empty apartment and realized she'd let him erase her. So I decided to rebuild, Amanda said. Not the old me, a new me, stronger. Did it work? Sarah asked. Are you stronger? Amanda smiled, but it was complicated. Some days, other days I cry in the shower. But I'm here. I got my degree. I'm working as a therapist now, helping other survivors. I have a life that's mine. And that's strength. On week 4, Rachel called with a request. I need your help. With what? New case. Woman in Harrisburg being followed by a neighbor. She needs someone to talk to. Someone who just went through it. Sarah's stomach dropped. I don't know what to say. I'm not qualified. You're the most qualified, Rachel said gently. You remember what it feels like right now. That's what she needs. Not advice, just witness. The phone call happened that evening. The woman's name was Tasha, 32, single mom. Her neighbor had started watching her from his window, asking about her schedule, showing up at the park when she was there with her daughter. I feel crazy, Tasha said, her voice shaking. He hasn't done anything, he just watches. You're not crazy, Sarah said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. I was you 4 weeks ago. She told Tasha her story. Not all of it, just enough to say I understand, I believe you. You're not making this up. Tasha cried with relief. You believe me? I do, Sarah said. And here's what we're going to do. She walked Tasha through documentation, keeping a log of every incident, taking photos of him watching from his window, filing a police report even though it probably wouldn't go anywhere, contacting the silent watch through Rachel's network. After the call, Sarah sat on her couch and cried again, but different tears, not fear, not grief, purpose. Rachel, who'd been listening quietly the whole time, squeezed Sarah's shoulder. You helped her. You gave her what you needed 4 weeks ago. Someone who believed her without needing proof. I did, didn't I? Sarah whispered. Rachel smiled. Welcome to the work. This is how healing happens. You take your pain and transform it into protection for others. Sarah started therapy in week 5. Dr. Patricia Walsh, trauma specialist in her late 50s with a warm smile and direct manner. Their first session was mostly intake, Sarah's history, her family, her goals. The trauma itself came up but wasn't the focus. We'll get there, Dr. Walsh said, but first I want to understand who you are beyond what happened to you. Because you're not just a victim, you're a whole person. By session 3, they were deep into the trauma processing. Dr. Walsh used something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, a therapy technique that sounded strange but had decades of research behind it. Here's what we're going to do, Dr. Walsh explained. I'm going to ask you to think about a specific moment from the stalking, the worst moment. And while you hold that memory, you're going to follow my finger with your eyes, left to right, back and forth. It mimics REM sleep, helps your brain reprocess the memory so it's not so emotionally charged. It felt silly at first, following her finger back and forth like some kind of hypnosis trick while talking about the night she'd seen Ryan's car blocking the bus stop. But Dr. Walsh was patient, kept her voice calm and steady. What do you notice in your body right now? My chest is tight. My hands are sweating. I can feel my heart racing like it's happening right now. Good. Stay with that. Keep following my finger. Let whatever comes up, come up. Sarah followed the movement, left to right, right to left. And something strange started happening. The memory was still there, but it felt further away, like she was watching it happen to someone else instead of reliving it herself. After 15 minutes, Dr. Walsh stopped. Check in with the memory now. When you think about that night, what do you notice? Sarah thought about Ryan's car, the bus stop, the fear. It's still there, but it feels different, quieter somehow, like it happened in the past instead of happening right now. That's exactly right, Dr. Walsh said. We're teaching your brain that the threat is over. You survived it. It's in the past where it belongs. They did this exercise every session for a month, different memories each time. The first night Ryan came to the diner, the moment she realized he was following her bus, the panic of knowing no one believed her. Each memory processed, reframed, moved from present terror to past events. The nightmares started changing. Instead of Ryan catching her, she'd wake up before that part, or she'd fight back in the dream, or Rachel would be there. Her subconscious was learning what her conscious mind already knew. The danger was over. She was safe now. "Where do you feel the fear in your body?" Dr. Walsh asked during session 4. "My chest, like it's going to explode." "What does it need to do?" "Not what you think it should do." "What does it need?" Sarah closed her eyes, tuned into the sensation. "It needs to scream, to run, to fight back." "Did you get to do any of those things when Ryan was stalking you?" Sarah shook her head. "No, I just smiled, poured his coffee, pretended I wasn't terrified." Dr. Walsh nodded. "Your body is still trying to complete the response it never got to have. That's normal. That's how trauma works. It gets stuck because the threat lasted weeks, but you never got to fight or flee. So what do? We help your body finish the response in a safe way. Would you be willing to try something?" Dr. Walsh had Sarah stand up, showed her how to push against the wall with her full strength, pushing and pushing until her muscles burned and her breath came hard and she was almost crying with the effort. "Good," Dr. Walsh said. "That's your body completing the fight response. Feel how strong you are. Feel how you could have fought if you'd needed to." When Sarah sat back down, trembling and sweating, something felt different. Looser, maybe, like a pressure valve had been released. The work continued week after week. Some sessions were about the stalking. Others were about Sarah's childhood, her relationships, her dreams for the future. Dr. Walsh helped her see the pattern. The way she'd learned to make herself small to avoid conflict. The way she'd prioritized everyone else's comfort over her own safety. "That's going to change," Dr. Walsh said in session 8. "Not overnight, but gradually you're going to learn that your needs matter, that saying no is allowed, that making men uncomfortable to keep yourself safe is not just okay, it's necessary." While Sarah was healing, other women in the network were on their own journeys. Amanda Torres had met someone. David, 35, software engineer, member of her book club. They'd been friends for months before he asked her out. Their first date was coffee in a public place, 1 hour, with Amanda texting her location to 3 friends. "He seems nice," Amanda told Nicole on the phone that night. "But Ryan seemed nice." Nicole, always the pragmatic one, asked the right questions. Did he respect your boundaries? Did he accept no the first time you gave it? Did he ask permission before assuming? "Yes to all 3, Amanda said. "He asked if he could call me tomorrow or if I needed space. He didn't expect a goodnight kiss. He paid for his own coffee without making it a thing." "That's what respect looks like," Nicole said. "But trust your gut. You know the difference now." By date 3, Amanda decided to tell David about Ryan. They were sitting in his car after dinner, and she knew it was now or never. "There's something I need to tell you. It might scare you off." David turned in his seat, giving her his full attention. "Okay. 5 years ago, I was stalked. For months. I had to get a restraining order. And it changed me." She watched his face carefully, waiting for the dismissal, the discomfort, the subtle pulling away that came when men realized she had baggage, had trauma. Wasn't the easy, fun girlfriend they'd imagined. Instead, David said, "That must have been terrifying." Not "how did you not see the signs?" Not "what did you do to encourage him?" Not even the well-meaning but useless, "I'm so sorry that happened." Just acknowledgement of her reality, her pain. "What do you need from me?" David asked. "How can I make you feel safe?" Amanda started crying, actual tears running down her face, because no man had ever asked her what she needed instead of telling her what he wanted to give. Ryan had decided what she needed was his constant presence, his attention, his version of love. But David was asking, letting her define the terms. "Can I ask questions?" David continued. "Or would you rather just tell me what you want me to know?" "You can ask." And he did. Thoughtful questions born of genuine care and a willingness to learn. What are your triggers? What can I do if you're having a hard day? How do I make sure I'm not accidentally doing something that reminds you of him? Are there places you don't feel safe? Times of day that are harder? They talked for 2 hours in that car. David learned about the silent watch, about Rachel, about the work Amanda was doing as a therapist helping other survivors. He asked about her family, her friends, her support system. Wanted to know not just about her trauma, but about her whole life. He didn't try to fix her. Didn't offer solutions she hadn't asked for. didn't promise to protect her as if she were fragile and helpless, just listened and learned and let her be whole and complicated and still healing. That night, after he'd walked her to her door and waited until she was inside with the lock turned before he left, Amanda called Nicole. "I think I might be able to do this. Trust someone again." Nicole was quiet for a moment. "I'm happy for you, really. But you know I'm not there yet, right? Maybe won't ever be." "I know," Amanda said, "and that's okay. We heal differently." Over the next 3 months, Amanda and David built something careful and intentional. They established boundaries together. Amanda said she needed at least 24 hours notice before he came to her apartment. She needed to meet in public places for the first month. She needed him to always tell her where he was going and when he'd be back. Not because she didn't trust him, but because unpredictability triggered her. And David said yes to all of it, never made her feel high maintenance or difficult, never sighed with frustration or suggested she was overreacting. On their 2-month anniversary, he attended an Allies of Survivors workshop that the Silent Watch had organized. Spent 3 hours learning from experts and other partners about how to support someone healing from stalking trauma. He came back with notes, actual handwritten notes about warning signs of flashbacks, grounding techniques, the importance of respecting her need to control her environment. "You didn't have to do that," Amanda said when he showed her. "I know," David replied, "but I want to understand. I want to be what you need, not what I think you need." That was the difference. That was what love looked like after trauma, not grand gestures or promises of protection, but quiet consistency, asking permission, respecting boundaries, showing up even when it was hard. Nicole Chen had moved up at her tech company, senior manager now, overseeing a team of 40. Her work was good, her apartment was nice, her friends were loyal. She didn't date, but she wasn't lonely. People ask sometimes, usually at weddings or family gatherings, "When are you going to find someone? Don't you want to get married?" Nicole's standard response was polite and vague. "I'm focusing on my career, maybe someday." But in therapy, in the monthly support group with women who understood, she told the truth. "I don't want to date. Not because I'm afraid, because I don't want to. I have a full life. Work I love, friends who show up, nieces and nephews who adore me. Romantic love isn't the only valid love." Dr. Keating nodded understanding. "Society tells us we're incomplete without a partner, especially women. But you get to define completeness for yourself." Some of the younger women in the group struggled with this, pushed back gently. "Don't let him win. Don't let him steal that from you." But Nicole, with 3 years of therapy and hard-won self-knowledge, stood firm. "He didn't steal it. I chose it. There's a difference. I'm not afraid of dating. I just don't want to, and that's valid." Diane, the oldest member of the group, backed her up. "I've been married twice, divorced twice. Neither had anything to do with my stalker. And now, at 62, I'm single and happy. Never been happier, actually. Partnership is wonderful for people who want it, but it's not required for a good life." On month 3 of Sarah's recovery, Rachel invited her to something different, not the support group, a planning meeting. "We're starting something new," Rachel explained. "A pilot program that bridges the gap between when a woman reports and when the law can act." The meeting was held in Rachel's apartment, a cozy second-floor walk-up with bookshelves covering every wall. 10 women gathered in the living room. Rachel, Sarah, Amanda, 2 local police officers who were part of the network, a lawyer who specialized in restraining orders, and several survivors who'd become advocates. Rachel presented the concept. The Crossroads Initiative, named after the diner where Sarah's life had changed. "Here's the problem," Rachel said. "Women report concerning behavior, but nothing illegal has happened yet. Police can't act. Restraining orders get denied because there's no credible threat. So women wait. And while they wait, predators escalate." She pulled up statistics on her laptop. 76% of women murdered by intimate partners were stalked first. Average stalking duration before it stops is 2 years. 2 years of fear, 2 years of looking over your shoulder, 2 years of the system saying we can't help you yet. "So what do?" one of the police officers asked. "We create a 3-tier response," Rachel said. "Legal advocacy, community protection, and law enforcement, working together instead of in silos." She outlined the plan. Tier 1, legal advocates help women document everything, file restraining orders, build cases. Tier 2, Silent Watch provides escorts, visible presence, deterrence. Tier 3. Police get involved with full documentation already prepared when laws are violated. The whole system is designed around belief, Rachel said, believing women before they have to prove their fear with injuries. Sarah listened to the planning, the passion, the expertise in the room. These women had lived through hell and were building something to make sure others didn't have to. Can I help? Sarah asked. I don't have a degree in anything useful yet, but I want to help. Rachel looked at her, smiled. You're already helping every woman you talk to every time you say I believe you. That's the foundation of all of this. But if you want to do more, we need volunteers. People to answer the hotline, do intake calls, sit with women while they file reports. I can do that, Sarah said. And she did. Started small, 1 or 2 calls a week. Women who'd heard about the silent watch through the network or through word of mouth. Women who were scared and didn't know where to turn. The first call was terrifying. A woman named Lisa, 26, being followed by an ex-boyfriend. Sarah's hands shook as she picked up the phone, introduced herself as a volunteer advocate. I don't know if I can help, Sarah had admitted to Rachel before taking the call. I'm still figuring this out myself. You know exactly how to help, Rachel had said. Tell her what you needed to hear. So Sarah did. She listened to Lisa describe the pattern, the constant texts, the showing up at her gym, the feeling of being watched even when she couldn't prove it. And Sarah heard her own story in Lisa's words, felt the same fear vibrating through the phone line. I believe you, Sarah said, and her voice was steady even though her hands weren't. You're not making this up. Your fear is valid. Lisa started crying. Everyone else says I'm being paranoid, that he's just trying to win me back, that I should give him another chance. You don't owe him chances, Sarah said. And you're not paranoid. You're listening to your intuition. That's survival. They talked for 45 minutes. Sarah walked Lisa through documentation, restraining order procedures, safety planning, gave her Rachel's number for silent watch escorts if needed. And at the end of the call, Lisa said something that would stay with Sarah forever. Thank you for believing me. You're the first person who has. After hanging up, Sarah sat on her couch and cried. But they were different tears, not the tears of trauma, the tears of purpose, of knowing that her pain could prevent someone else's. By month 6, Sarah was handling 5 calls a week, each one different but the same. Different names, different stalkers, same pattern of fear and dismissal and desperation. There was Monica, 42, being followed by a coworker her boss refused to fire. There was Beth, 19, college student with a stalker. The campus police said they couldn't do anything about. There was Keisha, 35, whose ex-husband had violated the restraining order 6 times but kept getting released. Sarah learned to calibrate her responses. Some women needed practical advice. Others just needed someone to say, I hear you, I believe you, this is real. Some wanted immediate action. Others needed time to process before making decisions. And Sarah learned something crucial. She couldn't save everyone. Some women weren't ready to take action. Some situations were too dangerous for civilian intervention and needed professional law enforcement. Some women chose to stay in harmful situations for reasons Sarah didn't fully understand. Dr. Walsh helped her process the helplessness that came with that reality. You can't force someone to save themselves, Dr. Walsh said in one of their sessions. You can only offer tools and hope they choose to use them. Their choices are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to show up, believe them, and offer options. What they do with that is on them. It was hard wisdom, but necessary, because Sarah was learning that advocacy wasn't about rescuing. It was about empowering, about saying, here are your options. Here's what I can offer. What do you want to do? Some women took the help and thrived, got restraining orders, relocated safely, rebuilt their lives. Sarah celebrated every victory, added their names to a private list she kept. Survivors who made it. Others fell through the cracks despite everyone's best efforts. Those were the names that haunted Sarah. The ones she couldn't save, the ones who didn't call back or whose situations escalated before intervention could happen. By month 8, Sarah had helped 15 women. 14 were safe. 1 had gone back to her abuser and cut off contact with the Silent Watch network. That one failure ate at Sarah. She brought it to the support group, voice breaking as she tried to explain. I did everything right. I gave her resources, offered escorts, connected her to a safe house, and she went back to him anyway. And now I can't reach her. Diane, wise with her 62 years and her own history of survival, leaned forward. You did everything right, and she made her choice. You can't want her safety more than she wants it herself. All you can do is leave the door open for when she's ready. Is she going to be okay? Diane's expression was compassionate but honest. I don't know, maybe not. But her choices are hers. Your job is to be here when she's ready to choose differently. It was the hardest lesson Sarah had learned so far. That loving someone, believing them, offering help, none of it guaranteed they'd survive. Some battles you couldn't win no matter how hard you fought. The work was hard. Some nights she'd hang up the phone and cry because the stories were so similar to her own, because she knew how close she'd come to being a statistic instead of a survivor. But Dr. Walsh helped her process the vicarious trauma, taught her about boundaries, about not taking on everyone's pain as her own, about knowing the difference between empathy and absorption. You can witness their pain without living it, Dr. Walsh said. You can hold space without drowning in it. Sarah was learning, slowly, painfully, but learning. On month 7, something unexpected happened. Sarah ran into Ryan Walsh. She was at the grocery store, early Saturday morning, half awake and focused on her shopping list. Turned the corner into the produce section, and there he was. They both froze. Sarah's hand went to her phone instinctively. Fight or flight response screaming at her to run, to call Rachel, to do something. But Ryan didn't move toward her. He stepped back, hands visible, body language submissive. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'll go to a different store. He started to turn away. Wait, Sarah heard herself say. Ryan stopped, didn't look at her, didn't approach, just waited. Are you still doing the program? Ryan nodded. Finished it 6 months ago. But I still see Dr. Keating, still check in with Rachel. I'll probably do that forever. Sarah studied him. He looked different, smaller somehow. Or maybe she was bigger. Good, she said, because you don't get to just move on. This is your life now. Accountability. I know, Ryan said, and I accept that. They stood there in the produce section for one more moment. Two people whose lives had intersected in the worst possible way, now both trying to be better than they'd been. I don't forgive you, Sarah said. I want you to know that. I don't deserve forgiveness, Ryan replied. I just want to be different. Sarah nodded, turned back to her shopping. Ryan left the store without buying anything. That night, Sarah called Rachel. I saw him today. Rachel's voice went sharp with concern. Did he approach you, threaten you? No. He backed off, gave me space. We talked for maybe a minute. He's still in therapy. How do you feel? Sarah thought about it. Okay, I was scared at first, but then I realized something. He doesn't have power over me anymore. I'm not the terrified girl at the diner. I'm someone who helps women survive what he did to me. And that's power. Rachel's voice was warm with pride. Yes, it is. By month 10, Sarah had made a decision. She went to her academic advisor, requested a meeting about changing her major. I want to switch from early childhood education to social work. The advisor, a kind woman in her 60s, pulled up Sarah's file. That's a significant change. Why social work? Because I was a child who needed protection, Sarah said. And no one protected me. I want to be the person I needed. The advisor nodded slowly. Social work is hard. You'll see terrible things. Sarah met her eyes. I've already seen terrible things. Now I want to stop them from happening to others. The paperwork went through. By the start of the next semester, Sarah was officially a social work major. It would take longer to graduate now. More classes, more field work, more money she didn't have. But Rachel connected her with scholarships through the Silent Watch Network. Amanda helped her apply for grants for survivors pursuing careers in advocacy. The community showed up the way communities do when they believe in someone. And Sarah showed up for herself. Attended every class. Worked every shift she could handle at the diner. Now feeling safe because Ryan was gone and the regulars watched over her. Answered calls for the Silent Watch hotline. Went to therapy. Wrote in her journal every night. Today I survived became. Today I helped someone survive became. Today I'm building something that matters. The transformation wasn't instant, wasn't linear. There were setbacks. Month 11, Sarah had a panic attack at the diner when a customer who looked like Ryan walked in. Spent 20 minutes in the bathroom trying to breathe. Month 12, she had nightmares 3 nights in a row. Woke up gasping, texting Rachel at 3 a.m., being gently talked back to reality. But there were victories too. Month 9, she went on her first date since the stalking. It didn't go anywhere, but she did it. Month 13, she gave her first public talk about the silent watch to a community group. Her voice shook, but she made it through. Month 14, she helped draft the language for a new law. Sarah's Law, they were calling it, expanding the definition of stalking to include patterns of behavior, not just explicit threats. The work was healing her in ways therapy alone couldn't, because she was taking the worst thing that had ever happened to her and using it to protect others. That's post-traumatic growth, Dr. Walsh explained in one of their sessions. You're not just healing from trauma, you're becoming stronger because of it. Sarah had always hated that phrase. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It felt dismissive of pain, like trauma was some gift in disguise. But Dr. Walsh explained it differently. It's not that the trauma was good. It wasn't. It was terrible, and it never should have happened. But you get to choose what you do with it. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it as fuel. Neither choice makes you weak, but one of them leads to purpose. Sarah chose purpose. By month 18, her life looked completely different than it had the night Rachel sat down across from Ryan Walsh. She was in social work school, working part-time as a volunteer advocate, dating occasionally with healthy boundaries, sleeping through most nights, smiling without it feeling forced. She still had hard days, still checked locks twice, still felt her heart race when she saw dark blue sedans. But she was living, not just surviving living. And when new women called the hotline, terrified and desperate and sure no one would believe them, Sarah's voice was steady and certain. I believe you. You're not alone. And we're going to make sure you're safe. Those words, the ones Rachel had spoken to her in a diner booth 18 months ago, had saved her life. Now she got to speak them to others. Got to be for them what Rachel had been for her. That was the legacy. That was the point. That was why the Silent Watch existed. Not to punish predators, though sometimes that happened. Not to replace the legal system, though sometimes it had to. But to say the words that should be automatic, but somehow never are. I believe you. Your fear is valid. You're not alone. And we will protect you. Simple words, powerful truth. Sarah Mitchell had learned them in her darkest moment. Now she taught them to others in theirs. That was healing. That was justice. That was the sisterhood. And it was only just beginning. Healing doesn't move in a straight line. It spirals and loops back on itself, takes detours through anger and grief and confusion before finding anything that looks like peace. Sarah Mitchell learned this the hard way in the months after Ryan Walsh disappeared from her life. Month 2 brought rage. Not the hot flash of anger that burns quick and dies, but the slow burning kind that lives in your chest and colors everything gray. Sarah was angry at everyone, at Frank for dismissing her, at the police for saying their hands were tied, at her friends who told her she was overreacting, at the system that waited for women to bleed before it would act. But most of all, she was angry at herself. The anger showed up in strange ways. She'd snap at customers over nothing, forget orders, slam plates down harder than necessary. Maria noticed first, caught Sarah in the break room between shifts with her head in her hands. "What's going on, mija?" Sarah looked up, eyes red from not crying because crying felt like weakness right now. "I keep thinking about all the things I should have done differently. I should have quit the first week. Should have moved, should have fought back instead of just smiling and pouring his coffee night after night." Maria sat down beside her, didn't touch her, but made her presence known. "You survived. That's what you should have done. And that's exactly what you did. But I was so weak, so passive. I just let it happen." "You didn't let anything happen," Maria said firmly. "He chose to stalk you. You chose to survive it. Those are different things." Sarah's therapist said the same thing in their next session. Dr. Walsh listened to Sarah's litany of should-haves and could-haves, the endless loop of self-blame that had worn grooves into her thoughts. Then she leaned forward with that look she got when she was about to say something important. "Where do you feel the anger in your body?" "My chest, like a weight pressing down, and my jaw. I'm clenching it all the time. Sometimes I wake up with my teeth hurting from grinding them in my sleep." "What else?" "My shoulders. They're always up around my ears. Tense, like I'm bracing for impact even when nothing's happening." "Close your eyes. Stay with those sensations." "What does the anger want to do?" Sarah closed her eyes, tuned into the heaviness in her chest, the tightness in her jaw. The anger felt like a caged animal pacing, wanting out, wanting to destroy something. It wants to scream, to break things, to go back in time and tell him off, to shove him out of the diner, to call the police myself and make them take me seriously. It wants to punch something, someone. Did you get to do any of those things while Ryan was stalking you? Sarah shook her head, eyes still closed, feeling the truth of it. No, I just smiled, poured his coffee, made sure I didn't do anything to make him angry, stayed quiet, stayed small, pretended I wasn't dying inside. That's called fawn response. It's one of the 4 trauma responses, along with fight, flight, and freeze. When you can't fight and you can't run and freezing won't save you, you fawn. You become what the threat wants you to be, hoping that will keep you safe. Did it work? It kept you alive. So yes, it worked, but now your body is trying to complete the fight response it never got to have. The rage you're feeling isn't wrong. It's your system finally feeling safe enough to have the response it needed 3 months ago. So what do I do with it? Dr. Walsh stood up, gestured for Sarah to follow. We help your body finish what it started. Stand up. Face this wall. Sarah stood, confused but willing. The wall was painted a soft cream color, bare except for some framed certificates. Put your hands on the wall and push, as hard as you can. I want you to pretend the wall is everything that failed you, the system that didn't protect you, Frank who dismissed your fear, the police who said they couldn't help, the friends who told you to get over it. Push against all of it. Fight back. Sarah pressed her palms flat against the wall, at first tentatively, feeling silly and self-conscious. This was a wall. Pushing it wouldn't change anything. Harder. Give it everything you have. Sarah pushed harder. Her arm muscles engaged, her core tightened, and something started happening in her chest. The weight shifted. The cage around her anger cracked. She pushed harder still, grunting with effort now, not caring how she looked or sounded. Her whole body engaged in the fight she'd never gotten to have with Ryan, with the system, with the unfairness of being a woman who'd done everything right and still gotten hurt. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept pushing, kept fighting, muscles shaking, breath coming in gasps, pushing and pushing until she had nothing left and had to stop. When she sat back down, trembling and sweating like she'd run a marathon, the weight in her chest felt different, lighter maybe, or at least movable. That's your body completing the response, Dr. Walsh said gently, handing her tissues. The anger isn't wrong. It's information. It's telling you that what happened to you was not okay. And you're right. It wasn't okay. Honor that. Feel it. Then let it move through you, instead of staying stuck. Sarah wiped her face, feeling raw and exposed and somehow cleaner. How often do I need to do this? Whenever the anger comes up. As many times as it takes for your body to believe the threat is over and you survived it. Sarah started doing the wall exercise at home. Every time the anger came up, sharp and hot and demanding, she'd press her hands against her apartment wall and push, sometimes for 30 seconds, sometimes for 5 minutes, until the rage worked its way out of her muscles and left space for something else. By month 3, the anger started transforming into something more complex. Not gone, but mixed with grief. Sarah grieved for the person she'd been before Ryan, the girl who'd trusted people, who'd smiled at strangers, who'd walk home at night without checking over her shoulder every few seconds. That girl felt gone, replaced by someone harder and warier and fundamentally changed. She brought this to the support group, voice-breaking as she tried to explain. I used to trust people. I'd give them the benefit of the doubt. Now I see threat everywhere. Every man who looks at me too long. Every customer who lingers. I feel like Ryan broke something in me that can't be fixed. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Margaret, the oldest member at 62, spoke with the weight of decades in her voice. I grieved my old self for years, the woman I was before my stalker. I wanted her back so badly. But one day I realized something. She wasn't gone. She evolved. You're not losing who you were, Sarah. You're becoming who you need to be. And that's not a loss. That's survival. Diane nodded agreement. The old you didn't know the world could be dangerous. The new you does. That knowledge is heavy, but it's also protection. You're not broken, you're wiser. Sarah wanted to believe them, but the grief sat heavy in her chest anyway, stubborn and aching. Dr. Walsh helped her unpack it over several sessions. Not just grief for the old Sarah, but grief for the innocence stolen, for the months lost to fear, for the energy spent just surviving instead of living. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Dr. Walsh explained. You loved the person you were. You loved feeling safe in the world. Losing that is real loss. You're allowed to mourn it. So Sarah mourned, wrote letters to her old self in her journal, cried in the shower where no one could hear, let herself feel the full weight of what had been taken without trying to rush past it or pretend it was fine. And slowly, over weeks and months, the grief began to shift into something that looked like acceptance. Not acceptance of what Ryan did, but acceptance that she was different now, and maybe that was okay. While Sarah was learning to carry her anger and grief, Amanda Torres was learning to trust again. It had been 6 years since Ryan stalked her, 5 years since the restraining order, and she'd spent most of that time building walls. High, thick walls that kept men at a safe distance. David Chen was patient with those walls, didn't try to scale them or knock them down, just waited at the base and let Amanda decide when she was ready to open a door. By their 4th date, Amanda knew this was different. David wasn't just nice, he was thoughtful in ways that suggested he'd actually listened to what she'd told him about her trauma. He texted before calling. He told her his schedule without being asked. He never showed up at her apartment unannounced. Month 2 of dating brought a hard moment. Amanda had a nightmare about Ryan, woke up gasping at 2 in the morning with her heart trying to escape her chest. Without thinking, she called David. He answered on the 2nd ring, voice thick with sleep, but immediately alert. Amanda, are you okay? I had a nightmare. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called so late. Don't apologize. Talk to me. What do you need? And that's when Amanda realized something crucial. David didn't just tolerate her trauma. He made space for it, created room for the hard parts without making her feel like a burden. Can you just talk to me? About anything, I just need to hear a voice that isn't the fear in my head. David talked for 40 minutes, told her about his childhood in Seattle, his parents who'd immigrated from Taiwan, his sister who taught high school chemistry. Mundane, beautiful, normal things that reminded Amanda the world held more than just fear and danger. When her breathing had returned to normal and the nightmare had faded, Amanda said thank you and meant it more than she'd ever meant those words. David responded with something that made her start crying for different reasons. You don't have to thank me for showing up. That's what people who care about each other do. Month 3 brought the conversation Amanda had been dreading. They were having dinner at his apartment, something she'd finally felt safe enough to do, when David asked the question she'd been waiting for. Can I ask you something about the stalking? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Amanda set down her fork, steeled herself. Okay. What are your triggers? I've been trying to figure out what makes you uncomfortable so I can avoid doing those things, but I'd rather just ask than guess and mess it up. The fact that he'd been paying attention, trying to learn her patterns, meant more than any grand gesture could have. Amanda took a breath and told him the specifics of what made her feel unsafe. Surprise visits, men standing too close, anyone approaching her from behind, cars that followed too long, persistent texts when she didn't respond immediately. David listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. I'm writing this down, not because I don't think I'll remember, but because I want to make sure I get it right. Is that okay? Amanda nodded, too moved to speak. Over the next months, David proved he'd been listening. He never approached her from behind without announcing himself first. He gave her space in elevators and doorways. When she didn't respond to a text right away, he waited instead of sending follow-ups. When they made plans, he confirmed the day before but didn't show up early. These small acts of respect accumulated into something that felt like safety. Amanda found herself relaxing around him in ways she hadn't with anyone since Ryan. Laughing without that edge of anxiety. Planning future dates without the instinct to keep an escape route ready. Month 5 brought a test neither of them had anticipated. They were at a restaurant halfway through dinner when Amanda saw him. A man who looked so much like Ryan that her whole body went rigid. Same height, same build, same dark hair. He was just another customer walking to his table, had nothing to do with them, but Amanda's nervous system didn't care about logic. Her fork clattered to the plate. Her breath came shallow and fast. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too crowded, too dangerous. David noticed immediately. Didn't ask what was wrong, didn't make a scene, just stood up calmly and said, "Let's get some air." He walked her outside, kept his body between her and the crowd. Didn't touch her because he'd learned that unexpected touch during a panic attack felt like assault. On the sidewalk, with cold night air on her face, Amanda started coming back to herself. David stood 3 feet away, hands visible, just present. Guy in the restaurant looked like him? Amanda managed to say between breaths. I know it wasn't. I know Ryan's not here. But my body doesn't know that. Your body is trying to protect you, David said. That's not wrong. That's your system working. Just breathe. You're safe. I'm here. Take your time. It took 15 minutes for the panic to fully pass. When it did, Amanda felt exhausted and embarrassed. I'm sorry, I ruined dinner. David shook his head. You didn't ruin anything. Your trauma got triggered. That happens. It's not your fault and you don't have to apologize for it. You don't think I'm too much? Too broken to date? David took a step closer, waited for permission before taking her hand. You're not broken. You're healing. And healing isn't linear. It's messy and hard. And sometimes it means leaving restaurants before dessert. I'm okay with that. The question is, are you okay with me seeing this part of you? Amanda looked at him. This man who'd asked her what she needed instead of telling her what he wanted to give. Who'd written down her triggers in his phone. Who'd walked her out of a restaurant without making her explain herself. Yeah, she said, I think I am. They went back to his apartment, ordered takeout, watched a movie curled up on his couch. And for the first time in 6 years, Amanda let herself imagine a future where love didn't mean danger, where trusting someone didn't feel like giving them a weapon they could use against her. It was month 6 when Amanda told Nicole about the relationship getting serious. They met for their usual coffee date, and Nicole knew immediately something had shifted. You're different. Happy different. Amanda smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. David asked me to move in with him. Nicole's expression was complicated. Happy for her friend, but also something else. Something that looked like loss. That's big. What did you say? I said I need to think about it. Moving in means giving up control of my space. My apartment is mine. I can lock the door and know I'm safe. Living with someone, even David, means trusting them with that safety. Do you trust him? Amanda thought about it, really thought. Yeah, I think I do, but I'm terrified anyway. That's normal, Nicole said. After what we went through, trust is scary. But Amanda, I'm so proud of you for trying, for letting someone in. There was weight in Nicole's voice, something unsaid but important. What about you? Amanda asked gently. Any thoughts about dating? Nicole was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee without drinking it. The cafe around them hummed with normal life. Couples holding hands, friends laughing, the world spinning forward while they sat in this pocket of honest conversation. No, and I don't think that's going to change. Amanda waited, didn't push. This was familiar territory for them. The unspoken question that hung between their different healing paths. I've been thinking about this a lot, Nicole continued. In therapy, in the support group. Everyone talks about healing like it means you get back to normal, that you date again, fall in love, prove the trauma didn't win. But what if that's not my normal? What if I'm just not interested in romantic relationships and that's okay? That is okay, Amanda said immediately, with the force of someone who'd examined this exact question in her own therapy. You know that, right? There's nothing wrong with you. I know. Intellectually, I know. But society really wants women partnered. My parents ask constantly when I'm going to settle down. Friends try to set me up even after I've told them no. Coworkers make jokes about me being married to my job. And I keep having to explain that I'm not avoiding love because I'm scared. I'm avoiding it because I don't want it. Those are different things. She took a breath and Amanda could see years of having to justify this choice in her eyes. I'm not afraid of men. I work with them every day. I manage 40 people, half of them male, and we have great professional relationships. I'm not triggered by romantic comedies or weddings. I go to both and genuinely enjoy them. I'm just not interested in having that for myself. Have you always felt that way? Or did Ryan change it? Nicole thought about it carefully. I think I've always been this way, but I didn't have language for it before. In college, I dated because that's what you did. But it always felt like I was playing a role, going through motions. I liked the guys as people, but I didn't feel what everyone said you were supposed to feel. The butterflies, the obsession, the need to be with them. When Ryan started stalking me, at first I thought maybe his intensity was that thing I'd been missing. Like maybe this horrible attention was proof that I was capable of making someone feel strongly. How messed up is that? Not messed up. Human. You were trying to make sense of abnormal behavior. After him, after the charges and the moving and the fear, I thought I'd never trust anyone again. But that's not what happened. I trust plenty of people, my friends, my coworkers, the barista who makes my coffee. Trust isn't my issue. What is? I just don't want a romantic partner. I want my apartment that's mine, my career that fulfills me, my friends who show up, my nieces and nephews who I spoil rotten. I want book clubs and travel and quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper. None of that requires romance. Are you happy? Amanda asked the question that mattered most. Nicole looked up, met Amanda's eyes with absolute certainty. Yeah, I am. I have my career. Just got promoted to senior VP last month. I'm the youngest in executive leadership and the only woman. That matters to me. I have my friends. You, Sarah, Rachel, the women from the support group. I'm godmother to your future kids. I have a full life. Romance isn't required for happiness. Then that's enough, Amanda said firmly. You don't owe anyone a relationship, not even as proof that you healed. They sat with that for a while. Two women who'd survived the same kind of trauma, but emerged with different needs, different futures. Amanda learning to trust again, planning a life with David. Nicole building something equally valid, but entirely different. Both healed, both whole, both proof that there's no single right way to put yourself back together after being shattered. Tell me about the promotion, Amanda said, shifting gears. Senior VP is huge. Nicole's face lit up in a way it never did when discussing dating. It's everything I wanted. I oversee product development for the entire West Coast region now. Team of 40 direct reports, budget in the millions. I'm working on an initiative to recruit and promote more women in tech, making sure the next generation doesn't have to fight as hard as I did for a seat at the table. That's incredible. Are you happy with the work? I love it. Some mornings I wake up and can't believe they're paying me to do something I do for free. Well, not for free, I'm not an idiot. But you know what I mean. It's challenging and important and mine. See? Amanda said, smiling. That's passion. That's what some people have for their partners. You have it for your work and your chosen family. Who's to say one is more valid than the other? Society, Nicole said wryly. But society doesn't get a vote in my happiness anymore. Back in Pennsylvania, Sarah was discovering her turning point. It came in month 6, on an ordinary Tuesday, with a phone call that changed everything. The woman's name was Keisha, 29, single mom, being stalked by her ex-husband despite a restraining order. She'd called the Silent Watch hotline in desperation, and Sarah had taken the call. For an hour, Sarah listened to Keisha's story. The escalating threats, the violations of the restraining order that police said they couldn't do anything about until he actually hurt her. The fear of letting her 5-year-old daughter play outside because he might be watching. It was Sarah's story. It was every woman's story. And something shifted in Sarah's chest as she listened. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was needed. Where are you right now? Sarah asked. Are you safe? I'm at my sister's house. He doesn't know this address, but I can't stay here forever. I have to go home eventually. And when I do, he'll be waiting. Sarah's voice was steady and certain in ways it hadn't been months ago. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to document every single violation of the restraining order. Photos, texts, witnesses, everything. Second, I'm connecting you with our legal advocate who specializes in getting protective orders enforced. Third, we're setting up Silent Watch escorts for when you do go home. You're not going to face him alone. They'll really do that? Keisha's voice cracked with hope and disbelief. They did it for me, and now I do it for others. That's how this works. We protect each other. After the call ended, Sarah sat on her couch and cried. Not from trauma this time, from purpose, from realizing that the worst thing that had ever happened to her could be transformed into the thing that protected others. She texted Rachel. I helped someone today, really helped, and it felt like maybe this whole nightmare happened for a reason. Rachel's response came within seconds. It didn't happen for a reason. It happened because a man made terrible choices. But you're choosing to make meaning from it. That's different. That's power. That distinction mattered. Sarah's trauma wasn't some gift from the universe teaching her a lesson. It was violence that never should have happened. But she got to decide what to do with it. She could let it destroy her, or she could use it as fuel to protect others. She chose fuel. The decision to change her major came 2 weeks later. Sarah sat in her academic advisor's office, nervous but certain. I want to switch from early childhood education to social work. The advisor, a woman in her 60s named Dr. Patterson, pulled up Sarah's file. That's a significant change. Can I ask why? Sarah took a breath. Because I was a child who needed protection, and no one protected me. I want to be the person I needed. Not for kids necessarily, but for women who are where I was 6 months ago, terrified and dismissed and told their fear doesn't matter. Dr. Patterson studied her for a long moment. Social work is hard. You'll see terrible things. You'll carry stories that don't have happy endings. You'll fight systems that actively resist change. Are you prepared for that? I've already seen terrible things, Sarah said. I've already carried stories. The difference is, now I want to do something about it. The paperwork went through. By the start of the next semester, Sarah Mitchell was officially a social work major. It meant 2 extra years of school, more money she didn't have, a delayed graduation date. But Rachel connected her with scholarship programs through the Silent Watch Network. Amanda helped her apply for survivor grants. The community showed up the way communities do when someone needs lifting. And Sarah showed up for herself. Attended every class. Worked her shifts at the diner with new confidence because she was building toward something. Answered more calls for the hotline. Went to therapy weekly. Filled journal after journal with reflections on healing and purpose and transformation. The nightmares came less frequently. When they did, she knew how to handle them. Call Rachel. Do the breathing exercises. Remember that she was safe now, that Ryan was gone and never coming back. By month 9, Sarah went on her first date since the stalking. His name was Tom, 32, who came into the diner sometimes for breakfast. He'd asked her out 3 times over the course of months, accepting her no each time without pushing. Until one day, Sarah said yes. The date was coffee in the afternoon, public place, 1 hour. Sarah texted Rachel her location and promised to check in after. Tom was nice enough, asked good questions, laughed at her jokes, didn't try to touch her or push for a second date right away. But when Sarah got home, she realized something. She didn't feel anything. No spark, no interest in seeing him again. And that was okay. She'd gone on the date, faced the fear of trusting a man again, and discovered she wasn't ready yet. Maybe she would be someday. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it was her choice, and that was power. Month 10 brought a moment Sarah had been dreading. She was at the grocery store early Saturday morning, turning into the produce section when she saw him. Ryan Walsh. They both froze. Sarah's hand went instinctively to her phone. Every muscle in her body screamed run, but she didn't run. She stood there and looked at him, and he looked different, smaller somehow. Or maybe she was bigger. I'm sorry, Ryan said, his voice quiet and careful. I'll go to a different store. He started to turn away. Wait. Ryan stopped. Didn't look at her, didn't approach, just waited. Are you still doing the program? Finished it 6 months ago. But I still see Dr. Keating. Still check in with Rachel. I'll probably do that forever. Sarah studied him. This man who'd terrorized her for 3 weeks, who'd made her afraid to exist in the world. He didn't look like a monster now, just looked tired and small and human. Good, because you don't get to just move on. This is your life now. Accountability. I know, Ryan said, and I accept that. They stood there in the produce section, surrounded by lettuce and tomatoes and the mundane normalcy of grocery shopping. 2 people whose lives had intersected in the worst possible way, both trying to be better than they'd been. I don't forgive you, Sarah said clearly. I want you to know that. I don't deserve forgiveness, Ryan replied. I just want to be different. Sarah nodded once, turned back to her shopping cart. Ryan left without buying anything. When Sarah got home, she called Rachel. I saw him today. Rachel's voice went sharp. Did he approach you? No, we talked for maybe a minute. He backed off when I told him to. And you know what I realized? What? He doesn't have power over me anymore. I'm not the terrified girl at the diner. I'm someone who helps women survive what he did to me. That's my power. And he can't take it. Rachel's voice was warm with pride. No, he can't. That same week, 3,000 miles away, Amanda Torres had her own encounter with Ryan Walsh. She was at her regular grocery store in New Jersey, the one she'd shopped at for 4 years without incident. Turned the corner into the dairy section and there he was. For a split second, Amanda's brain couldn't process it. Ryan Walsh, the man who'd stalked her 6 years ago. The reason she'd moved states, changed jobs, spent thousands on therapy. standing 10 feet away, reaching for a carton of milk. Then their eyes met and everything stopped. Amanda's first instinct was to run, to leave her cart, get to her car, call Rachel or David or 911. But then she remembered who she was now. Dr. Amanda Torres, trauma therapist, survivor turned healer, woman who'd built an entire career on reclaiming power from trauma. She stood her ground. Ryan's face went white. He set down the milk with shaking hands and took 3 steps back. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm shopping here. I live nearby. I didn't know you'd be here. I'll leave." He started to turn away. "Wait." The word came out stronger than Amanda expected. Ryan stopped, didn't look at her, body language screaming submission and fear. "You live here? In Jersey?" "I moved here 2 years ago. For work. I didn't know this was your store. I can shop somewhere else." Amanda's mind raced. According to Rachel's network updates, Ryan had completed his therapy program, had checked in consistently for 3 years, had shown no signs of reoffending, but knowing that intellectually and seeing him in person were different things. Her phone was in her hand, David on speed dial, but something made her pause. "Are you still in therapy?" "Yes, every other week now, down from weekly. I'll probably go monthly for the rest of my life." "You still check in with the network?" "Every month. They know I moved here. They approved it. I swear I'm not following you. This is just unfortunate coincidence." Amanda studied him, really looked. 6 years ago, he'd been confident, entitled, convinced that persistence would eventually make her want him. The man standing in front of her now looked haunted and small. "I read your letter," Amanda said, "last year." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do that. I know I waited 3 years before I opened it. Nicole still hasn't opened hers. That's her choice. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it." Amanda took a step closer. Not close enough to threaten her own sense of safety, but close enough to make him hear her clearly. "You're right. You don't. But I want you to understand something, Ryan. I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will, but I believe you changed. Not because you're a good person who deserves credit, but because if you changed, it means the next woman is safe. That's all I wanted, for there not to be a next woman." Ryan nodded, crying openly now. "There won't be. I swear to you. I'd rather die alone than hurt someone the way I hurt you." "Good," Amanda said, "because that's your responsibility, not mine to forgive, not mine to absolve, yours to carry." She picked up her shopping cart. "I'm finishing my shopping now. You can leave or stay. I don't care. But if I see you again anywhere, I'm calling Rachel. And then it won't be a polite conversation, understood?" "Understood." Amanda finished her shopping, paid, walked to her car with her head high and her hands only shaking a little. Once inside with the doors locked, she called David. "I saw him." David's voice was immediately alert. "Ryan, where? Are you safe?" "I'm safe. I'm in my car." "And David, I wasn't scared. Or I was, but I didn't let it control me. I said what I needed to say, and then I left on my terms." David was quiet for a moment. "I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of me too." That night, Amanda called Nicole and Sarah, 3 women connected across states by trauma and survival, sharing a moment of triumph. "I saw Ryan today," Amanda told them. "And I didn't run, I didn't panic, I just told him the truth." "What truth?" Sarah asked. "That I don't forgive him. That he has to live with what he did. That his change matters only because it protects other women, not because he earns anything from it." Nicole was quiet on the line, then said something that made them all pause. "I don't think I could have done that. If I saw him, I'd just leave." "That's okay," Amanda said. "We heal differently. You don't have to confront him to be healed." "Do you feel healed?" Sarah asked, after seeing him. Amanda thought about it. "I feel powerful. Like I took back something he stole. He's just a sad man living with consequences now, and I'm a woman with a full life who doesn't think about him unless I choose to. That feels like healing to me." They talked for an hour, 3 survivors comparing notes on different healing paths. Amanda, who'd confronted Ryan and walked away stronger. Sarah, who'd seen him and realized he had no power left. Nicole, who'd chosen not to read his letter and was equally healed. All 3 valid, all 3 strong. All 3 proof that survival has many forms. Back in Pennsylvania, Rachel Rivers was having her own moment of reckoning. She'd been running the Silent Watch for 15 years, had built it from a private forum to a network spanning 23 states, had saved over 200 women. And she was tired, not tired of the work, tired of defining herself by the worst thing that had ever happened to her. At 41, Rachel wanted more than to be the survivor who saved others. She wanted to be Rachel, just Rachel. The decision came during a quiet evening in her apartment. She was sorting through old files, updating the database, when she came across a photo from 20 years ago. Herself at 21, before Thomas Wade, before the attack, before everything changed. That girl in the photo had wanted to be a teacher, had loved books and coffee shops and long walks, had believed the world was mostly good with pockets of bad. Rachel had become someone different, someone harder and wiser and infinitely sadder, but also stronger, more purposeful, more connected to a community that mattered. She didn't want to be the old Rachel again, but she wanted room for parts of herself that weren't defined by trauma. She called a meeting with the core Silent Watch team. Sarah, Amanda, Marcus, and 3 other longtime coordinators gathered in Rachel's living room. "I need to tell you all something," Rachel said. "I'm stepping back." The room went silent, not stepping down, still on the board, still available for consultations. "But I can't be day-to-day coordinator anymore. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I need to build a life that isn't only about the worst thing that happened to me." Sarah spoke first, her voice careful. "What will you do?" Rachel smiled, and it was lighter than she'd felt in years. "I'm opening a bookstore, something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. Somewhere I can talk about stories instead of trauma, where people come in looking for escape or adventure or romance instead of safety." "Who will take over as coordinator?" Marcus asked. Rachel looked at Sarah. "If she wants it, Sarah will." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Me?" "Rachel, I've only been doing this for a year. I'm still figuring out how to help people without drowning in their trauma." "Which makes you perfect," Rachel said. "You remember what it's like to need help. You know how to hold space without taking on too much. And you have the passion. That matters more than experience." Sarah looked around the room at faces she'd come to trust, then back at Rachel. "Okay, I'll do it, if you're sure." "I'm sure. You're ready. And I'll be here whenever you need me. I'm not disappearing, just evolving." The transition took 3 months. Rachel trained Sarah on the systems, the contacts, the careful balance of belief and boundaries. By month 14 of Sarah's healing journey, she was officially the new coordinator of Silent Watch operations in Pennsylvania. It was terrifying and perfect and exactly where she needed to be. And Rachel, true to her word, opened Chapter 2 books in downtown Pittsburgh. A cozy shop with wooden shelves and reading nooks and a section dedicated to survivor stories because she couldn't fully leave that part of herself behind. On opening day, Sarah and Amanda and Nicole all came. They stood together in front of the store, 3 women who'd found each other through trauma and built something that looked like family. Rachel cut the ribbon with tears in her eyes. "This is for the girl I was before and the woman I became after. Both get to exist now." The 3 younger women clapped and cheered, and in that moment, surrounded by books and hope and the people who'd helped her heal while she helped them, Rachel felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose and joy and life beyond survival. That night, Sarah wrote in her journal, not the usual entry about surviving another day, but something different. "Today I survived. Today I helped someone else survive. Today I celebrated a woman who taught me that healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means building a future big enough to hold both who you were and who you're becoming." Across the country, Amanda wrote in her own journal, lying in bed next to David, who'd asked her to marry him that week. She'd said yes, but slowly, giving herself time to feel the fear and the joy and the trust. "Today I chose love, not because I forgot what fear feels like, but because I decided love was worth the risk of being seen." In her apartment in Seattle, Nicole sat with her journal, surrounded by photos of her chosen family. No romantic partner, but plenty of love. "Today I chose myself, and that's enough. That's always been enough." 3 women, 3 healing journeys, 3 different destinations, all valid, all powerful, all proof that survival comes in many forms, and there's no single right way to be whole. The Silent Watch kept growing. More states, more volunteers, more women protected. But the real legacy wasn't in the numbers. It was in the moments. Rachel believing Sarah without proof. Sarah believing Keisha. Amanda trusting David. Nicole choosing herself. All the small acts of courage that added up to something bigger than any individual trauma. That was the sisterhood. That was the healing. And somewhere in Pennsylvania, in a diner that had seen violence prevented and lives saved, a new waitress poured coffee and smiled at customers and never knew that 20 feet from her booth, history had been made. The Crossroads Diner kept its flickering neon sign, kept its chipped tiles and wobbly ceiling fans, kept being a place where people found each other in moments of need. And if you listened carefully on quiet nights, you could almost hear the echo of words that changed everything. I believe you. You're not alone. We will protect you. Simple words, powerful truth, the foundation of everything that came after. Sometimes a single moment captured on a phone changes everything. Mrs. Patterson had been sitting in booth 2 of the Crossroads Diner that November night, finishing her pie with her husband, when 3 motorcycles pulled up outside. She'd felt the tension shift, seen the young waitress go pale with fear, watched as a woman in a leather jacket sat down across from the man who'd been watching too intently all evening. Something about the scene struck her as important, historic, even. So she'd pulled out her phone, recorded 30 seconds of footage, just Rachel sitting down across from Ryan, the visible tension, Sarah watching with desperate hope from behind the counter, the biker standing in support, a moment of justice happening outside the law. 2 days later, her granddaughter helped her post it to TikTok. The caption was simple: "Woman protecting woman from her stalker at local diner. We need more people like this." 14 million views in 72 hours. The video hit a nerve that nobody had quite articulated before. Not just women who'd been stalked, but women who'd been followed, catcalled, harassed, dismissed. Women who'd been told they were overreacting, being dramatic, should feel flattered by the attention. Suddenly they had visual proof that their fear was valid, that intervention was possible, that someone believed them enough to act. The comments section became a repository of stories that most people never hear. Women sharing their own experiences with stalking, harassment, dismissal. Thousands of voices saying finally, "Someone believes us. Someone acts." "This is what real strength looks like," one comment read, with 50,000 likes. "Not violence, just presence and belief." Another comment with 30,000 likes said, "I was told for months that my stalker was just persistent, that I should give him a chance. He eventually attacked me in my apartment. I wish I'd had someone like this woman." "Where can I find this network when I need them?" another asked. "How do I get help before it's too late?" "My daughter is being stalked right now," wrote a mother whose desperation was palpable even through text. "Police say they can't do anything until he hurts her. I'm losing my mind with fear. Where do I go?" The replies to that comment filled with resources, phone numbers, networks in different states. Women who'd never met coordinating to help a stranger's daughter 3 states away. "This is what community looks like," someone commented. "When systems fail, people show up." But not all the comments were supportive. A vocal minority pushed back, called it vigilantism, said innocent men could be falsely accused, asked what about due process. The responses to those comments were swift and surgical. "He was stalking her for 3 weeks. That's not an accusation. That's a pattern. Due process is for courts. This is community protection. If you're worried about being falsely accused of stalking, maybe examine why you think normal social interaction looks like stalking," wrote a woman whose bio identified her as a lawyer. And from a man whose comment got 40,000 likes, "I'm a father of 3 daughters. If this is vigilantism, then I'm here for it. The law doesn't protect women until they're already hurt. This does. That's enough for me." The conversation expanded beyond the comment section. Think pieces in major newspapers, debates on cable news, legal experts weighing in on the murky boundaries between community protection and taking the law into your own hands. But the women who'd lived it, who'd called the hotline terrified and found help, they didn't care about the legal debates. They just knew they were alive because someone had believed them before the blood. The comments went on for days, weeks, a collective outcry from women who'd been told their fear wasn't enough, who'd waited for systems that never came. News stations picked up the story. Local first, then regional, then national. Everyone wanted to interview Rachel, Marcus, Sarah. Everyone wanted to know about the silent watch. Rachel declined every interview request with the same statement, sent through a lawyer to maintain boundaries. "We did what anyone should do. We believed a woman when she said she was in danger before she got hurt. That shouldn't be newsworthy. It should be normal. Should be." But the media attention had consequences. Within 6 months of the video going viral, the Silent Watch documented 43 similar interventions across the country. Men approaching women in bars, on streets, in parking lots, only to find themselves facing riders who politely but firmly suggested they move along. The interventions followed a pattern: no violence, no threats, just presence. Just the message that this woman is not alone, she is believed, and you need to leave now. Most predators left. The network grew. 400 volunteers became 600. 23 states became 30. The hotline that Rachel had started with a single phone line now required 3 paid staff members and a dozen trained volunteers to handle the volume of calls. Sarah coordinated it all from a small office above Rachel's bookstore. 2 years into her healing journey, 1 year into her role as Pennsylvania coordinator, she was learning what it meant to build a movement. The work was both heartbreaking and hope-filled. Every call that came in represented a woman in danger. Every successful intervention represented a life potentially saved. Sarah kept a private tally in a locked drawer, names she could share with the network, victories she could celebrate with the team. By month 18, the tally read 67 women protected under Sarah's coordination. 67 women who called the hotline scared and alone and found a community ready to believe them. But not every call ended in victory. That was the weight Sarah learned to carry. There was Melissa, 34, whose ex-husband violated the restraining order 6 times before finally escalating to violence. The Silent Watch had been there, had documented everything, had provided escorts and support. But the system moved slowly, and Melissa paid the price. 3 broken ribs and a fractured orbital bone before her ex was finally arrested and held without bail. Melissa survived, but she'd been hurt, and Sarah felt that failure like a weight in her chest. She brought it to her monthly coffee date with Rachel. They met at a cafe halfway between the bookstore and Sarah's apartment, a routine they'd established to maintain the mentor relationship even as Sarah grew into her role. "I can't stop thinking about Melissa," Sarah said, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. "We did everything right. Restraining order, documentation, escorts. And he still hurt her." Rachel was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "You did everything right, and the system failed her anyway. That's not on you. But if we'd been faster, if I'd pushed harder with the police, if we'd gotten her to a safe house sooner." Rachel reached across the table, stilled Sarah's hands. "Listen to me. You cannot want someone's safety more than the system allows you to provide it. We're not law enforcement. We're not social services. We're a community network doing what we can in the gaps. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's not. The failures aren't yours to own." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Then whose are they?" "The systems, the culture that protects abusers, the laws that require violence before intervention, the judges who don't take stalking seriously, the police departments that are understaffed and undertrained. All of it, but not yours. It doesn't feel like enough, protecting most of the women but not all of them." Rachel leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Most is better than none. 67 women are safe because you answered the phone. That matters. Melissa survived because you got her out before he could do worse. That matters too. You don't get to dismiss the victories because of the failures. Both exist. Both matter." Sarah wiped her eyes, nodded. The grief didn't disappear, but it felt more manageable shared between them. "How did you do this for 15 years? Sarah asked. "How did you carry all the stories?" "Not well at first," Rachel admitted. "I burned out 3 times before I learned boundaries, before I understood that I couldn't save everyone and trying to would destroy me." "What changed?" "Therapy. A lot of therapy. And understanding that my job isn't to save women. It's to witness them, to believe them, to offer resources and let them choose what happens next. Their choices are not my responsibility. Only my showing up is." Sarah absorbed this, added it to the growing collection of wisdom Rachel had shared over the past 2 years. "I'm glad you're still here," Sarah said. "Even though you stepped back, I still need you." "I'm always here," Rachel replied, "just not drowning in it anymore. That's the difference. I'm building a life that includes this work but isn't consumed by it. You'll get there too." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Rachel's bookstore was thriving. She'd hired 2 part-time employees, was hosting author events and book clubs, had become a fixture in the community for reasons that had nothing to do with trauma. "And there's someone," Rachel said with a small smile. "Someone I've been seeing." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Really? Tell me everything." "Her name is Maria. You know her, actually. The nurse from the diner." "Maria who brings tamales?" "The same. We ran into each other at a community event 6 months ago. Started talking. Realized we had a lot in common. She asked me to dinner, and I said yes. And that's wonderful," Sarah said, genuinely delighted. "Are you happy?" "I am. It's different from anything I've had before. Slower, more intentional. She knows my history. I know hers. We're both building something careful and real. No rush, no pressure. Just 2 people who understand that healing takes time." This was Rachel's gift to Sarah. Not just the tactical skills of running the network, but the modeling of what life could look like after trauma. Not perfect, not unmarred, but full and rich and worth living. 3 months after that conversation, Sarah launched the Crossroads Initiative, named after the diner where her life had changed. It was designed to bridge the gap between when a woman reports and when the system can legally act. The pilot program operated in 3 counties across Pennsylvania. Sarah had spent 6 months building partnerships: 2 local police departments who had officers willing to think differently, a law firm that specialized in restraining orders and agreed to provide pro bono work, the Silent Watch Network for community protection, and a team of volunteers, all survivors themselves, ready to staff a 24-hour hotline. The model was simple but revolutionary. A woman calls, scared but not yet hurt. An intake specialist answers within 2 rings. Together they assess the danger, document everything, create a safety plan. Legal advocates help file restraining orders with evidence packages that make judges pay attention. Silent Watch provides escorts if needed. Police receive full documentation, so when laws are violated, prosecution is swift and certain. The whole system operated on a principle that should have been obvious, but somehow wasn't. Believe women before they bleed. Sarah presented the model to the city council on a humid afternoon in June, stood at a podium in a room full of people who had the power to fund or kill this idea. "Last year," Sarah began, 67 women reported stalking in our 3-county area. Only 8 got restraining orders before violence occurred. That means 59 women had to wait to be hurt before the system helped them. We can do better." She clicked to the next slide, showing the statistics in stark black and white. The average stalking victim endures the behavior for 2 years before it stops. 76% of women murdered by intimate partners were stalked first. The warning signs exist. The danger is real. Victims know it. But our system requires proof that often only comes after irreversible harm. A council member raised his hand. "This sounds like vigilantism. What's to stop this network from taking the law into their own hands?" Sarah had prepared for this question: accountability and oversight. Every intervention is documented. We work with law enforcement, not instead of it. And we're survivors. We know what it's like to be afraid. The last thing we want is to become the thing we survived. We're not punishing predators. We're protecting potential victims. Another council member, a woman in her 50s, spoke up. "What's the cost?" $150,000 per year for the pilot. 3 paid staff positions, hotline infrastructure, legal support, and volunteer training. If it works, we can scale. If it doesn't, we've spent less than the medical costs of 1 woman hospitalized by domestic violence. The vote came 2 weeks later, approved unanimously with a 12-month trial period. Sarah called Rachel first with the news, crying so hard she could barely speak. "We did it. They funded it. It's real." "You did it," Rachel corrected gently. "This was your vision, your work. I'm so proud of you." The Crossroads Initiative launched on a Monday morning in September. Sarah and her team of 5 volunteers, all survivors, all trained in trauma-informed advocacy, gathered in their small office and answered the first call together. The woman's name was Brenda, 45, divorcing abusive husband who'd made it clear he wasn't letting her go easily. She'd already filed a restraining order request. The hearing was in 2 weeks. She was terrified. Sarah took the call herself, put it on speaker so her team could learn the process. "Brenda, I'm Sarah. I'm the director of the Crossroads Initiative. First thing I need you to know is that I believe you. The second thing is that you're not alone anymore. Can you tell me what's happening?" For 30 minutes, Brenda talked, The threats, the showing up at her kid's school, the messages from fake accounts, the feeling of being watched even when she couldn't prove it. Sarah's team took notes, built a timeline, documented everything. When Brenda finished, Sarah laid out the plan. Here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to meet with our legal advocate tomorrow. She's going to help strengthen your restraining order application with all this documentation. Second, we're arranging a safe house placement for you and your kids until the hearing. Third, one of our team members is going to attend the hearing with you. You won't face the judge alone. You can really do all that? We can and we will. That's what this program exists for. The hearing happened 2 weeks later. Sarah attended, sat behind Brenda in the courtroom as the judge reviewed the evidence. Photos of the ex-husband's car parked outside Brenda's workplace. Screenshots of threats sent from anonymous accounts that investigators traced back to his IP address. Witness statements from neighbors who'd seen him circling her house. The judge granted the restraining order, then went further, setting strict monitoring conditions and a high bail if violated. Outside the courthouse, Brenda hugged Sarah so hard they both cried. Thank you. Thank you for believing me. You believed yourself first, Sarah said. You called for help. That took courage. We just made sure the system listened. The Crossroads Initiative handled 67 cases in its first year. Each one a story of fear transformed into safety, system failure bypassed by community action. There was Monica, 24, grad student whose teaching assistant had started showing up at her apartment. Campus administration said they'd talk to him. 3 weeks later, he was still showing up. Monica called the hotline at 2 a.m, crying so hard she could barely speak. Sarah's team had a legal advocate with her by noon, restraining order filed by 3 p.m., silent watch escort to her apartment by evening. The TA was arrested when he violated the order 2 days later. Evidence package was so thorough, he took a plea deal to avoid trial. There was Linda, 58, whose ex-husband had started tracking her car with GPS after their divorce. Police said it was civil matter, not criminal. Linda called the Crossroads Initiative. They connected her with a tech specialist who found and removed 3 trackers from her vehicle, a lawyer who filed for an emergency protective order citing stalking by technology, and a safe house when the ex showed up at her workplace making threats. He was arrested, served 2 years. Linda got her life back. There was Keisha, the single mom Sarah had helped on one of her first calls. Her ex-husband had violated the restraining order 6 times. Each time, police would respond, document, release him. No accountability. Keisha was terrified. The Crossroads Initiative changed the game. They compiled every violation into one comprehensive evidence package, got a prosecutor who actually cared to take the case, provided court advocates who sat with Keisha through every hearing. The judge finally set bail high enough that the ex couldn't make it. Keisha and her daughter were safe for the first time in 2 years. 53 restraining orders granted. 21 safe house placements. 8 arrests when orders were violated. But those numbers didn't capture the texture of the work. Didn't show the 3 a.m. phone calls when a woman was too scared to sleep. Didn't show the hours spent in courtrooms. The careful documentation of threats. The strategic coordination between legal advocates and community protectors. And the statistic that mattered most to Sarah, the one she checked every morning like some people check the weather, 0 deaths, 0 serious injuries among participants. Not everyone they helped stayed helped. Some women went back to their abusers. Some couldn't afford to stay in safe housing long term and returned to dangerous situations. Some lost their court cases despite perfect documentation because judges are human and humans are imperfect. Sarah kept a different tally in her bottom drawer, the ones who got away, the ones who fell through the cracks despite everyone's best efforts. Those names haunted her in the quiet moments, reminded her that even a functioning system can't save everyone who needs saving. But the program worked more often than it failed, and the city council saw that in the numbers. Renewed funding, increased budget, approved expansion to 2 more counties. While Sarah was building systems in Pennsylvania, Amanda and Nicole were building something different across the country. A podcast called Survived and Thriving launched 2 years after Ryan's program completion. The format was simple. 2 women, same trauma, different healing paths, monthly episodes where they talked about what comes after survival, the messy middle, the rebuilding. Episode 1 got 50,000 downloads in the first week. Welcome to Survived and Thriving, Amanda said in her therapist voice, warm and professional. I'm Dr. Amanda Torres. 6 years ago, I was stalked for months by a man who couldn't hear no. Today, I'm a trauma therapist, married, mother of one with another on the way. And I'm Nicole Chen, Nicole added. Same man stalked me 4 years ago. Today, I'm a senior VP at a tech company, single by choice, godmother to more kids than I can count, and living my best life. We're here to talk about the part nobody tells you, what healing actually looks like. The episodes covered everything: dating after trauma, which Amanda discussed with hard-won wisdom about building trust slowly; choosing not to date, which Nicole explained without apology or shame; panic attacks at the grocery store; nightmares that come back without warning; the anger that never fully goes away; the joy that's possible anyway. Episode 7 was called When Triggers Happen in Public. Amanda shared the restaurant incident with David, how she'd frozen when she saw a man who looked like Ryan. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. And for about 3 minutes, I wasn't in a restaurant with my boyfriend. I was back in Albany with Ryan following me. That's how trauma works. It collapses time. How did David handle it? Nicole asked. Perfectly. He got me outside, didn't touch me without permission, just kept his voice calm and told me I was safe. And when it passed, he didn't make it about him. Didn't ask me to apologize or explain, just said, "That happened. Do you want to talk about it or move forward?" That's what good partnership looks like, Nicole observed. Someone who holds space for your healing without making it their burden to carry. Episode 12 got controversial. Nicole talked about not wanting romance and the pushback she received. People act like I'm broken, Nicole said with frustration. Like choosing to be single means trauma won. But I'm not avoiding relationships because I'm scared. I'm choosing this life because it makes me happy. Why is that so hard to accept? The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from women, especially older women, who felt the same but had never heard it validated. I'm 62. One comment read with 2,000 likes. I've been widowed for 10 years. Everyone tells me to get back out there, that I need to find someone. But I'm happy alone. I travel, I volunteer, I have grandkids and book clubs and a garden I love. Why isn't that enough? Thank you for saying it's okay. I'm 28 and never wanted to date, wrote another. Not because of trauma, just because I don't feel that pull everyone talks about. I thought something was wrong with me. This episode made me cry with relief. I'm not broken, I'm just different, a man commented, surprising both hosts. I'm a widower, lost my wife 5 years ago. People keep trying to set me up, telling me she'd want me to be happy. But I am happy. I had 50 years with the love of my life. That's enough for one lifetime. Nicole's words gave me permission to stop pretending I want something I don't. The episode sparked a broader conversation about relationship expectations and societal pressure. Other podcasts picked it up. Articles were written. The comments section became a support group for people choosing unconventional paths to happiness. Episode 15 featured both Sarah and Rachel as guests, talking about mentorship and passing the torch. I was drowning in the work, Rachel admitted. 15 years of carrying every story, every failure, every close call. I thought stepping back meant I was weak or giving up. But Sarah taught me something crucial. The work is bigger than any one person. And the best thing I could do for the movement was to build a life that included it but wasn't consumed by it. How did you know you were ready to lead? Amanda asked Sarah. I didn't, Sarah replied honestly. I was terrified, still am most days. But Rachel believed I was ready before I believed it myself. That's what mentorship is. Not waiting until someone's perfect, but seeing their potential and trusting them to grow into it. The episode resonated with women in leadership, women in transition, women building movements in their own communities. The comment section filled with stories of mentorship given and received, of torches passed and legacies built. Episode 18 featured a guest who made both hosts cry. A woman named Jennifer, who'd been protected by the Silent Watch 3 years ago when her coworker was stalking her. She'd since become a volunteer advocate herself. You saved my life, Jennifer told Amanda and Nicole. Not just physically. You gave me a model for what healing could look like. You showed me that surviving wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Now I answer the hotline. I sit with women in court. I do for them what you did for me. That's the legacy, Nicole said, voice thick with emotion. That's how movements grow. Not from the top down, but from survivors becoming advocates, becoming mentors. It's infinite. The podcast grew beyond anything they'd imagined. Within a year, they had 100,000 regular listeners. Speaking invitations came from universities, conferences, survivor networks. Book deal offers arrived from 3 major publishers. Amanda and Nicole decided to write it together, along with Rachel and Sarah. 4 women, 4 different journeys, 1 united message. The book would be called The Silent Watch: How Women Save Each Other When Systems Fail. They signed the contract on the 3-year anniversary of that night at the Crossroads Diner. Advance was substantial. Royalties would go to funding Silent Watch expansion and therapy scholarships for survivors who couldn't afford treatment. The manuscript was due in 6 months. They worked on it together, trading chapters, fact-checking each other's memories, being ruthlessly honest about the hard parts. The manuscript ran long, nearly 400 pages. Their editor said it was perfect, that readers needed to see the full scope of healing and hurt and hope. While the movement grew and stories were shared, Ryan Walsh was living a quiet life that looked nothing like his first 34 years. 3 years after completing his therapy program, he was still checking in monthly with Rachel's network, still seeing Dr. Keating every other week, still working third shift at the warehouse to minimize interaction with the public. He'd moved to a small apartment in central New Jersey, close enough to his job but far enough from anyone he'd hurt. The apartment was sparse: a mattress on the floor, a small table with 2 chairs, a bookshelf full of psychology texts he read trying to understand what had broken in him. He didn't date, didn't go to bars or clubs or anywhere that single people gathered. When loneliness pressed in, which it did most nights, he wrote in his journal or called the crisis line Dr. Keating had set up for her clients. The crisis line counselor, a man named James who'd also been through the program, would talk him through it. "You're feeling lonely," James would say. "That's normal. That's human. What do you do with it?" I remind myself that being lonely is better than terrorizing someone, that my discomfort is not more important than someone else's safety. Good. And what else? I remember Amanda's face when she saw me at the grocery store. The fear, the way she had to be brave to even speak to me. I carry that. It keeps me honest. These conversations happened weekly, sometimes daily. The program had taught Ryan that accountability wasn't a one-time event. It was a lifetime practice. One Saturday evening, Ryan was at his regular grocery store, the small one 2 blocks from his apartment. He shopped at 8 p.m. when crowds were thin, bought basics, got in and out quickly. He was in the parking lot loading bags into his car when he heard it. A woman's voice, tight with stress and barely controlled fear. "Please leave me alone. I said I'm not interested." Ryan's whole body went rigid. That tone, that pitch, he knew it intimately, had caused it himself in 3 women whose faces he'd never forget. He looked up. 2 rows over, a woman in her late 20s was walking fast toward her car. A man was following, not touching but close, too close, his body language aggressive despite his words being superficially polite. "Come on, just give me your number. I'll wait right here while you think about it." "I'm a nice guy, really." She said no, the woman repeated, voice shaking now. "Please go away." But the man didn't go away. He positioned himself between her and her car door, not blocking it exactly, but making it clear she'd have to get past him to leave. Ryan stood frozen in the parking lot, grocery bags half loaded into his trunk. Every instinct screamed that this was not his business. He was the last person who should intervene in a situation like this. He was a reformed stalker, a man who'd done exactly what this guy was doing. Who was he to stop someone else? But he could see Sarah in that woman's fear, the way her shoulders hunched, the way she tried to make herself smaller, less threatening, hoping that would make him leave. Could see Amanda, could see Nicole, could see every woman he'd ever terrorized reflected in her desperate eyes scanning for escape routes. Dr. Keating's voice echoed in his head from a session 6 months ago, when Ryan had asked if he'd ever be anything other than a predator who happened to stop predating. "You can't undo the past," Dr. Keating had said. "You can only choose what you do next. Every moment is a choice. You can choose fear and paralysis, or you can choose action and accountability. Both will be hard. One will be meaningful." Ryan's hands were shaking as he closed his trunk, took 3 deep breaths like his therapist had taught him, centered himself in the present moment, not the past where he was the danger, not the future where he might mess this up, just now where a woman needed help. He walked over, hands visible at his sides, body language submissive and non-threatening. Stopped 10 feet away, gave them both space. "Hey, man," she said no. The words came out steadier than he felt. The man turned, irritated at the interruption. Up close, Ryan could see he was younger than Ryan, maybe late 20s, wearing a polo shirt and khakis like he'd just gotten off work at some office. Normal looking. Probably thought of himself as a nice guy, just like Ryan had. "Mind your business." "This is my business," Ryan said, and his voice was quiet but firm. "Because I used to be you. And I'm telling you, she means it. Walk away." The man's expression shifted through confusion, then anger, then something that might have been fear. "Used to be me? What are you talking about?" Ryan took another breath. This was the moment. He could walk away now, let security handle it, stay anonymous. Or he could do what Dr. Keating had suggested might be his path forward. Use his shame as a tool to protect others. "I was a stalker," Ryan said, and the words felt like stripping naked in public. "I terrorized women for years. I did exactly what you're doing now, told myself I was just persistent, just showing I cared, just being a nice guy who deserved a chance. But I was making them afraid. You're making her afraid. And I can see it on her face because I put that exact fear on 3 women's faces before I got stopped." The man stared at him like he was insane. "I'm not stalking anyone. I just asked for her number. That's not illegal." She said no. "You followed her to her car. You're blocking her door. You're not taking no for an answer. That's not asking. That's intimidating. Stop." "I wasn't. I'm not trying to scare her. I just think we'd be good together if she'd just give me a chance." Ryan felt something crack in his chest. That phrase, "give me a chance," he'd said those exact words to Amanda, had believed them too, had convinced himself that if she'd just spend time with him, she'd see how good they'd be together. "Doesn't matter what you think you're doing," Ryan said, and his voice was harder now, carrying 3 years of therapy and accountability. "Matters what she's experiencing, and she's experiencing fear. So you can walk away now with your dignity intact, or security can escort you away, and you can explain to your boss why you got arrested for harassment in your company parking lot. Your choice." Mall security was indeed heading their way now. 2 guys in uniform talking into radios. The man saw them coming, looked at Ryan one more time with an expression Ryan recognized. Confusion that his normal approach wasn't working. Anger that he was being called out. Shame starting to creep in around the edges. "This is ridiculous," the man muttered, but he was already backing away. "I wasn't doing anything wrong." "Yes, you were," Ryan said quietly. "You just didn't know it yet. I hope you figure it out before you hurt someone." The man left quickly, got in his car 2 rows over, peeled out of the parking lot with an angry squeal of tires. Security arrived, asked if there was a problem. The woman, still shaking, explained what happened, pointed at Ryan. "He helped me. That guy was following me and wouldn't leave me alone. This man made him go away." The security guards thanked Ryan, took his information in case they needed a witness statement, asked if he was okay. "I'm fine," Ryan lied. "Just glad she's safe." When security left, the woman approached Ryan. She was crying now, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving her shaky. The woman stood trembling by her car door. Ryan took 2 steps back, giving her space. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call anyone? Walk you to your car?" "No, The woman's voice cracked. "Thank you. Thank you for actually doing something. You don't have to thank me. You just have to get home safe." She got in her car, locked the doors, sat there for a minute collecting herself. Ryan walked back to his own car, loaded the rest of his groceries with shaking hands. That night, he called Dr. Keating on her emergency line. "I intervened. I stopped someone from doing what I used to do. Does that mean?" Dr. Keating let him finish the question he couldn't quite ask. "Does it mean you're redeemed?" "No. You're never redeemed from hurting people. But it means you're choosing to be different. That's all any of us can do." I was terrified I'd make it worse, that I'd be just another man she had to be afraid of. But you weren't, 'cause you centered her safety, not your ego. That's the difference. Ryan sat with that for a long time after hanging up. He wrote in his journal the entry that would define this phase of his life. "I can't undo what I did to Amanda, Nicole, or Sarah. But maybe I can make sure someone else doesn't have to be them. Maybe that's my redemption. Not erasing the past, but changing someone else's future." The next day, he called Rachel for his monthly check-in, told her what happened. Rachel was quiet for a moment after he finished. You did the right thing, not because you're a good person who deserves credit, but because you centered her safety. That's what matters. Will you tell the others, Sarah and Amanda? I'll tell them. They have a right to know. But Ryan, understand something. This doesn't change what you did to them. One good act doesn't erase 3 traumatic experiences. I know I'm not asking for absolution. I'm just trying to do better. Then keep doing better every day for the rest of your life. When Rachel told Sarah about Ryan's intervention, Sarah's response was complicated. Relief that a woman was safe, discomfort that Ryan was part of making her safe, pride maybe, that something she'd survived had contributed to his change, which contributed to protecting a stranger. She brought it to therapy, trying to untangle the feelings. I'm glad he helped her, but I also don't want to give him credit. Does that make sense? Dr. Walsh nodded. You can hold both. His change is good for future women, and it doesn't change what he did to you. Both are true. Do I have to forgive him? Now that he's proven he's different? No. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself when you're ready, not a reward someone earns. You never have to forgive him. And you're still allowed to celebrate that he's not hurting people anymore. Those are separate things. Sarah sat with that, let it settle into the complicated truth it was. Amanda's response was simpler when Nicole told her, Good. I hope he spends the rest of his life making up for what he did, one woman at a time. And I still don't forgive him. Nicole didn't have a response at all, which was also valid. She'd chosen not to engage with Ryan's journey. That was her boundary, and everyone respected it. 2.5 years into the Crossroads Initiative, Sarah gave a presentation at the state capitol. The bill under consideration was called Sarah's Law, though she'd asked them not to name it after her. The law would expand the legal definition of stalking to include patterns of unwanted contact, not just explicit threats. Would improve interstate tracking so predators couldn't just move and start fresh. Would allocate funding for programs like the Crossroads Initiative across the state. Sarah testified before the Judiciary Committee, told her story for the first time in a formal setting. My name is Sarah Mitchell. 3 years ago, a man stalked me for 3 weeks. Police couldn't help because he hadn't broken any laws. My boss didn't believe me because he was a paying customer. I was told to wait until he hurt me before the system would act. That's not justice. That's just waiting for violence. She presented the statistics, the research, the data that showed early intervention saves lives. Then she made it personal. I'm one of the lucky ones. Someone believed me before I got hurt. But that someone wasn't the police, wasn't my employer, wasn't the legal system designed to protect me. It was a survivor who built a network because the system failed her 20 years ago. We shouldn't need underground networks. We should have laws that define stalking before it becomes assault. The opposition asked predictable questions. What about false accusations? What about men who are just awkward, not dangerous? What about due process? Sarah had prepared for this too. This law doesn't remove due process. It just lowers the bar for what constitutes stalking. If a man contacts a woman repeatedly after she said no, documents show the pattern, witnesses confirm the behavior, that's not awkward. That's harassment. And women know the difference. We've always known the difference. It's time the law caught up. The bill passed 28-12. Governor signed it into law 3 months later. Within a year, 7 other states introduced similar legislation. Sarah's law became a model for how to protect women before they became victims. On the 3-year anniversary of that night at the Crossroads Diner, Sarah, Rachel, Amanda, and Nicole gathered at the bookstore. Chapter 2. Books had become their unofficial headquarters, the place where they met monthly to check in and remember why they did this work. Rachel made coffee, real coffee from her espresso machine. Amanda brought pastries from the bakery next door. Nicole showed up with a bottle of wine because some anniversaries required alcohol. They sat in the reading nook, surrounded by books and soft lighting, and took stock of what they'd built. The Silent Watch now operated in 37 states, 800 volunteers, 312 women protected in the past 3 years alone, 0 deaths among those under the network's watch. The Crossroads Initiative had expanded to 12 cities across 5 states. 204 women served in year 2, 67 restraining orders enforced, 31 arrests, and still 0 deaths, only 2 minor injuries. Sarah's law had passed in 8 states, was under consideration in 15 more. The podcast had 200,000 regular listeners. The book deal was signed, manuscript due in 6 months. And the four women sitting in that bookstore, drinking coffee and wine and talking about their lives, were healed. Not perfectly, not completely, but healed enough to live full lives that included but weren't consumed by their trauma. "We did something," Sarah said quietly. "We actually changed things." "You did something," Rachel corrected. "I started it, but you grew it. You and Amanda and Nicole and everyone who chose to transform pain into protection." "It's not enough, though," Amanda said. "There are still women being hurt, still women the system fails." "No," Rachel agreed. "It is not enough. It'll never be enough until stalking stops happening. But it's more than there was before, and that matters." They sat with that truth. The work would never be done. There would always be more women who needed help, more predators who refused to stop, more systems that failed to protect. But they'd built something, proved that community protection works when legal protection doesn't. That was legacy. That was purpose. That was women saving women because no one else would. As they finished their coffee and wine, preparing to head home to lives that were full and complicated and worth living, Sarah thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, terrified at a diner, whispering please to a stranger, sure her life was ending. That girl would be proud of who she'd become. Scared but brave, broken but healing, surviving and then helping others survive. That was enough, that was everything. The Crossroads Diner still stood on Route 44, still served coffee and pie to travelers passing through. The neon sign still flickered. The vinyl booth still held stories. And somewhere in Pennsylvania, in offices and bookstores and apartments across the state, women who'd been believed were building lives where fear didn't have the final word. That was the movement. That was the mission. That was the promise they made to every woman who called the hotline scared and desperate. "I believe you, you're not alone, and we will protect you." Simple words. Revolutionary truth. The foundation of everything that came next. 10 years is long enough to transform a life. Long enough to build a career from ruins. Long enough to turn trauma into purpose, fear into strength, survival into something that looks like thriving. But it's not long enough to forget. Some things you carry forever, even when the weight becomes bearable. Rachel Rivers stood in her bookstore on a Tuesday morning, sorting through new arrivals and thinking about time. Chapter 2. Books had been open for 8 years now, had become a fixture in downtown Pittsburgh. People came for the carefully curated fiction, stayed for the community Rachel had built. Reading groups met Thursday evenings, local authors did signings on weekends. High school students studied in the back corner where Rachel kept the comfortable chairs and never rushed them to buy something. The survivor stories section was still there, still prominent, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. Rachel had romance and mystery and science fiction and poetry, had cookbooks and travel guides and memoirs about joy instead of pain. The bookstore reflected who she'd become, someone whose story included trauma but wasn't defined by it. She was 46 now. The gray in her hair had spread from threads to streaks, and she'd stopped coloring it 2 years ago. Decided she'd earned every gray hair fighting battles most people never knew about. The scars on her forearm had faded to pale lines you'd only notice if you knew to look. She still had hard days, still checked locks twice, still felt her stomach drop when someone reminded her too much of Thomas Wade. But she also had good days, great days. Days when she woke up excited about a new book shipment or an author event she was hosting. Days when Maria, who'd been her girlfriend for 3 years and her wife for 1, made coffee the way Rachel liked it, and they sat in comfortable silence reading the paper together. The wedding had been small, just 40 people in the bookstore on a Sunday afternoon. Sarah had been her maid of honor, had held Rachel's bouquet, and cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus had walked her down the aisle because their father had never understood who Rachel was, but Marcus always had. They'd exchanged vows surrounded by books, which felt appropriate for two women who'd rewritten their own stories. Maria's vows had been simple and perfect. "I promise to love you on the hard days when the past feels present. I promise to hold space for your healing without trying to rush it. I promise to build a life with you that honors who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming." Rachel's vows had been harder to write, had gone through 17 drafts before she found the words. "You saw my scars and didn't look away. You heard my story and didn't try to fix me. You loved me not despite my trauma, but with full knowledge of it. That's the kind of love I thought I'd lost the right to when Thomas Wade broke into my apartment. Thank you for proving I was wrong. Maria understood Rachel's trauma in ways that mattered. As a nurse who'd worked ER for 20 years, she'd seen what violence did to bodies and souls, had held the hands of women who'd come in after assaults, had documented their injuries with careful tenderness, had been there in those first terrible hours when the world felt unsafe and would never feel safe again. She didn't try to fix Rachel, didn't get impatient with the occasional nightmare or the need to know where Rachel was at all times. Just loved her steadily, consistently, through all of it. This morning, they'd had breakfast together before Maria left for her shift. Rachel had made pancakes, Maria had poured the coffee, and they'd sat at their small kitchen table talking about nothing important, plans for the weekend, whether to repaint the bedroom, what book Rachel should read next, the kind of mundane, beautiful conversation that trauma survivors learn to treasure because they know how fragile peace can be. Maria had kissed her goodbye at the door, squeezed her hand 3 times, their silent signal, "I love you." Rachel had squeezed back 4 times, "I love you more." A ritual they'd developed in the first months of dating when words felt too heavy but touch said everything. This morning, Rachel was preparing for a book signing. The book was The Silent Watch: How Women Save Each Other. When Systems Fail, written by Rachel Rivers, Sarah Mitchell, Amanda Torres, and Nicole Chen. Published 6 months ago. Already in its 3rd printing. New York Times bestseller for 12 weeks. The signing was scheduled for 2 p.m. Sarah was driving up from Philadelphia, where she now ran the statewide Crossroads Initiative. Amanda was flying in from New Jersey, where she directed a trauma therapy center. Nicole was coming from Seattle, where she'd just been promoted to chief operating officer of her tech company. 4 women who'd met through tragedy, built a movement, and were now telling their story to the world. Rachel arranged chairs in the reading area, set out refreshments, checked the stack of books. The advance copy sat on her desk, cover design bold and striking. 4 women's silhouettes, no faces shown, standing together. The tagline read, "When the system fails, sisters show up." The book had been hard to write, reliving the details, the fear, the failures alongside the victories. But it had also been cathartic, a way to process everything they'd built and everything it had cost them. Critics called it powerful and necessary. Readers called it life-changing. Survivors called it the book they'd needed 10 years ago. The signing was at capacity. 80 people registered. Some were survivors themselves. Some were advocates and social workers. Some were just people who'd seen the viral video years ago and wanted to support what these women had built. Sarah arrived first, walking in with the confidence of someone who'd grown into her power. She was 28 now, 3 years into her role as regional coordinator. Looked older in good ways, laugh lines around her eyes, posture that spoke of someone who knew her worth. She wore a blazer over jeans, professional but approachable. Behind her came her husband James, carrying their 3-year-old son Marcus on his shoulders. And in Sarah's arms, their 1-year-old daughter Emma, already fighting sleep despite the afternoon hour. Rachel hugged Sarah carefully, mindful of the baby. "You brought the whole crew," Rachel observed with a smile. "James has them for the signing, I'm working. But I wanted you to meet Emma. She's why the dedication page includes future daughters." The book's dedication read, "For our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, and every woman who believed before she had proof. May you never need what we built, but know it exists if you do." Amanda arrived next with David and their 2 children. Their older daughter was 5, serious and watchful like Amanda had been at that age. Their younger son was 2, all energy and chaos. David had the patient look of a man who'd learned that fatherhood meant constant vigilance mixed with unconditional love. Amanda looked radiant. Pregnancy and motherhood had rounded her in ways that seemed to soften the sharp edges trauma had carved. She'd published 3 papers on treating stalking survivors in the past year, had opened her own practice with 8 therapists, all survivors themselves, all trained in her methods. Nicole was last to arrive, flying in from a conference in San Francisco. She wore a power suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, carried herself with the assurance of someone who'd earned every promotion through competence and grit. At 41, she was the youngest C-suite executive in her company's history, the only woman, and she wore that achievement like armor. She hugged each of them in turn, held Emma with the ease of someone who'd been godmother to enough babies to know how to support a wobbly neck, admired Amanda's kids, ruffled young Marcus's hair. "The gang's all here," Nicole said, and there was warmth in her voice that she reserved for these women, this chosen family. They spent an hour catching up before the signing, talked about work and life and the small victories that added up to full lives. Rachel shared that Maria was thinking about going back to school for her nurse practitioner license. Sarah talked about a new grant that would expand Crossroads Initiative to 5 more cities. Amanda mentioned she was writing another book, this one about raising children after trauma. Nicole, when asked about her personal life, smiled that smile that said this question again. "Really? I'm dating my career. It's a very satisfying relationship, no drama, consistent rewards for effort, and it doesn't care if I text back immediately." They laughed because they'd had this conversation 100 times. Nicole's choice to remain single wasn't something she defended anymore. It just was. As much a part of her as Amanda's choice to build a family, or Sarah's choice to lead the movement. All valid, all proof that survival has many faces. The book signing started at 2. The room filled with people who'd driven hours to be there. Women who'd called the Silent Watch hotline and been saved. Women who'd used the Crossroads Initiative and gotten protection. Women who'd listened to the podcast and felt less alone. But also men, fathers of daughters, brothers of sisters, partners of survivors. Men who understood that this work wasn't against them but for everyone, that making women safer made communities safer. The 4 authors took turns reading from different chapters. Rachel read from the opening, her story of survival, and the decision to build something from the ruins. Sarah read from the middle, about the night at the diner, and the whisper that changed everything. Amanda read about learning to trust again. Nicole read about choosing herself. Each reading was met with applause, with tears, with nods of recognition from people who'd lived similar stories. Then came the question and answer session. Hands shot up across the room. A woman in her 50s stood, voice shaking as she spoke. "I was stalked 30 years ago. There was no network then, no one believed me. I survived by luck, not by anyone's help. I just want to say thank you for building what I needed, even though it came too late for me." "It's not too late," Sarah said gently. "You're here. You survived. And now you know where to go if anyone you love needs help. That matters." A younger woman, maybe mid-20s, asked about starting a Silent Watch chapter in her state. "We have a process for that," Rachel explained. "Training, vetting, connection to the national network. It's on our website. We're in 42 states now. The goal is all 50 by next year." A man with gray hair and kind eyes raised his hand. "I'm a retired police officer. 30 years on the force. And I have to say you're doing what we couldn't. The system ties our hands until violence happens. What you've built, it's what policing should be. Preventative, community-based. I just want to thank you." The room applauded. It was validation from an unexpected source, proof that this wasn't about opposing law enforcement, but about filling the gaps where law enforcement couldn't reach. The signing went on for 2 hours. People lined up with books, many already tear-stained from reading it in advance. Some just wanted signatures. Others wanted to share their stories. The authors listened to each one, held space for the pain and the triumph, signed books with messages of encouragement. One woman, around 40, stood in front of Sarah and started crying before she even spoke. "You saved my life. 4 years ago, I called the hotline. You answered. Do you remember? My ex was violating the restraining order, and police kept letting him go." Sarah looked at her carefully. So many calls, so many women, but something clicked. "Keisha?" The woman nodded, crying harder. "You got me into a safe house, got a prosecutor who cared, sat with me at court. My daughter and I have been safe for 4 years because of you." Sarah came around the table, hugged her while they both cried. "You did the hard part. You called. You trusted us. You fought for yourself and your daughter. I just walked with you. But I needed someone to walk with. I couldn't do it alone. None of us can. That's the point." Moments like this happened throughout the signing. Reunions between advocates and the women they'd helped. Connections made between survivors who'd never met but recognized each other's stories. The room hummed with the energy of people who'd been through hell and come out the other side. By 4 p.m., when the last book was signed and the last story shared, all four women were exhausted but full. This was why they'd written the book. Not for fame or money, though the royalties were going to good causes, but for this, for the community it built, for the validation it provided. After the signing, they gathered at Rachel's apartment for dinner, a tradition they'd maintained for years. Once a month at minimum, the four of them would meet, sometimes just to decompress, sometimes to strategize about the movement, always to remember that they were more than the work. They were friends, sisters, chosen family. Maria had made dinner, her famous chicken mole that took 6 hours and filled the apartment with the smell of chocolate and chili and comfort. They ate family style at Rachel's worn dining table, kids being kids in the background with James and David on supervision duty, women talking about the things that mattered. "Did you see the news?" Nicole asked between bites. "Sarah's law just passed in Washington state. That's 12 states now." Sarah nodded, allowed herself a moment of pride. "And 3 more have bills pending. We're getting there. Slowly, but getting there." The law was Sarah's legacy in a different way than the Crossroads Initiative, changing actual legal definitions of stalking, requiring interstate tracking, funding programs like the one she ran. It was systemic change, the kind that would outlast any individual. Amanda shared that her practice was expanding. 3 new therapists joining, all survivors, all trained in her methods. She was also consulting with medical schools about adding trauma-informed care to the standard curriculum. If we train doctors to recognize signs of stalking and abuse, they can intervene earlier, be part of the network that catches women before they fall. Nicole talked about her company's new initiative, recruiting and promoting women in tech, making sure the next generation didn't have to fight as hard as she had for a seat at the table. She'd personally mentored 8 women in the past year. 5 had been promoted. 2 had started their own companies. The conversation drifted to lighter topics. Marcus and Emma's latest milestones. Amanda's daughter starting kindergarten. Nicole's last vacation to Japan. Rachel's plans to expand the bookstore to the empty space next door. They were just women living their lives. Happened to be women who'd survived terrible things and built something beautiful from the rubble. But tonight, they were just friends eating dinner and laughing about the ridiculous things their kids did or the awkward moments at work. This was healing too, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the living beyond the trauma kind. Around 9, after kids were in bed and the dishes were washed, they sat in Rachel's living room with wine and talked about the thing they'd been dancing around all evening. "Carlos," Sarah said finally. "We need to talk about Carlos." The revelation had come 6 months ago. Rachel had been at the Crossroads Diner, stopping in for nostalgia and pie. Carlos still worked there, though he'd cut back to 3 shifts a week at 73. She'd chatted with him like she had dozens of times over the years. Then the TV over the counter had played a news segment about the book launch, showed a clip of Rachel telling her story, the attack 24 years ago, the man who broke into her apartment, the stranger who saved her. Carlos had gone very still, set down the spatula, turned to look at Rachel with eyes that held recognition, and something that might have been relief. "That woman they're talking about, that's you." Rachel had nodded, confused by the intensity of his gaze. "That night, Pittsburgh, 2003. That was me." The words had hung in the air for a moment. Then Rachel understood. "You're the truck driver. You're the one who saved me." Carlos had nodded, and both of them had started crying right there in the diner. The story came out slowly. How Carlos had been undocumented then, driving trucks under a borrowed name, terrified of deportation. How he'd heard Rachel scream and couldn't not help. How he'd given false information to the police because he was afraid they'd send him back to Mexico. How he'd become a citizen 10 years ago, but never knew how to find the woman he'd saved. Didn't even know her last name. Her. And then he'd been working at this diner where years later, another woman needed saving. Had watched Marcus sit down across from the stalker. Had seen history repeat with a different ending. Had recognized that the man in the vest was doing what Carlos had done once, acting when action was needed. Now 6 months later, the 4 women were still processing what it meant. That the man who'd started it all, who'd shown Marcus that strangers save strangers, had been there the whole time, working at the diner, making the pancakes. Part of the story, but invisible. "He wants to come to the anniversary gala," Rachel said. The 10-year event we're planning. I told him he's not just invited, he's guest of honor. If he's comfortable with that, he should be there. Amanda agreed. He's part of this, part of what we built. Does he know? Nicole asked. Does he know that saving you led to all of this? I told him, Rachel said. Told him about the network, the protection, the lives saved. He cried, said he'd just done what anyone should do, didn't realize it would ripple outward like this. That's the thing about acts of courage, Sarah said quietly. You never know what they'll become. He saved you. You built a network, we expanded it. And now thousands of women are alive because one man heard a scream and ran toward danger instead of away from it. They sat with that for a moment. The weight of legacy, the power of one choice to cascade across decades. The anniversary gala was scheduled for 3 months later, a Saturday evening in November. Exactly 10 years after that night at the Crossroads Diner when Sarah had whispered, "Please," and Rachel had answered with, "I believe you." The venue was a convention center in Pittsburgh. 500 people registered, survivors and advocates, lawyers and social workers, police officers and judges who'd partnered with the movement, reporters who'd followed the story from viral video to legislative change, and Carlos Martinez, 77 years old, sitting in the front row wearing a suit he'd bought special for the occasion. Beside him, his daughter Rosa, who'd driven 3 hours to be there. His grandkids, who didn't fully understand why Grandpa was being honored, but knew it was important. Sarah stood at the podium, now 33 years old, and the executive director of the National Crossroads Initiative. She wore a blue dress that Maria had helped her pick out, stood straight and certain in a way that 23-year-old Sarah could never have imagined. 10 years ago tonight, Sarah began. I was a waitress at a diner, being stalked by a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. The system had failed me. My boss had failed me. I was alone and terrified and sure that night would end with violence. She paused, looked at Rachel sitting in the front row next to Maria. And then a woman I didn't know sat down in my booth and said 5 words that changed my life. I believe you, and I'm going to help. The room was silent. You could hear 500 people breathing together. Those 5 words became a movement, became a network, became a model for how communities can protect members when systems can't or won't. And tonight, we're here to celebrate what those 5 words built. Sarah clicked to the first slide, statistics in bold font. Silent Watch now operates in all 50 states. 1,200 volunteers. Over 10 years, we've protected women in need. 0 deaths among women under our watch. The crowd applauded. The Crossroads Initiative operates in 37 cities across 18 states. Last year alone, we served 412 women, 318 restraining orders obtained, 87 arrests when orders were violated, 0 deaths among participants. More applause. Sarah's law has passed in 15 states. Another 12 have pending legislation. It's changing how we legally define stalking, making intervention possible before violence happens. Sarah clicked to the next slide, a quote in large letters. When I was terrified, I was told to wait until I got hurt. This movement says we don't wait. We believe. We act. We protect. That's not vigilantism, that's community. She looked out at the room full of people who'd made this possible. None of this was inevitable. It happened because one woman survived an attack and decided to build something so others wouldn't have to. It happened because survivors became advocates. Because advocates became leaders. Because leaders trained others to lead. That's how movements grow. Not from the top down, but from the ground up. From women helping women who then help other women in an infinite chain of protection. Rachel took the podium next, spoke about the early days, the failures and fear, the learning curve of building something with no manual to follow. I made so many mistakes, Rachel admitted. Burned out 3 times, took on too much, couldn't separate the work from my identity. But Sarah taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. The movement is bigger than any one person. The best thing I could do was step back and let the next generation lead. She gestured to Sarah, who stood beside her now. Sarah Mitchell is why this works, why it grew, why it's sustainable. She took what I built and made it better. That's legacy. Not holding on to power, but passing it to people who'll use it well. Amanda spoke about healing, about the podcast and the book and the practice she'd built, about learning to trust again and building a family despite fear. Trauma doesn't have to be the end of your story, Amanda said. It can be the beginning of something else, something powerful. I'm a therapist because of what happened to me. A wife, a mother. None of that erases the trauma, but it proves that healing is possible and life after violence can be full and beautiful and worth living. Nicole talked about choosing yourself, about the pressure to be in a relationship and the validity of choosing otherwise. Society tells women we're incomplete without a partner. I'm here to say that's garbage. I have a full life, meaningful work, chosen family, purpose. Romance isn't required for happiness. And healing doesn't mean returning to some predetermined normal. It means building the life you actually want. The audience included dozens of women who'd chosen similar paths, who'd built lives around career and friendship and passion for work rather than romance. They stood and applauded until Nicole had to wipe her eyes. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Sarah called Carlos to the stage. The old man walked slowly, using a cane now, helped by his daughter Rosa. He'd dressed in a suit bought special for the occasion, navy blue with a tie his grandkids had picked out. Stood at the microphone looking uncomfortable with the attention, but willing to be there anyway, because Rachel had asked, and he'd never been able to say no to someone who needed him. Sarah stood beside him, one hand lightly on his shoulder in support and solidarity. When she spoke to the room, her voice was thick with emotion. This is Carlos Martinez. 24 years ago, he heard a woman scream. He was making a delivery in Pittsburgh, just trying to finish his shift and get home. Could have ignored it. Could have called the police and waited from a safe distance. Instead, he kicked down a door and stopped an assault in progress. The woman he saved was Rachel Rivers. The room erupted. People were standing now, applauding so hard and long that Carlos's granddaughter started crying. His daughter Rosa put her arm around him while he stood there looking overwhelmed. Sarah waited for the applause to die down before continuing. Carlos didn't know he'd saved the founder of the Silent Watch. Didn't know his one act of courage would ripple forward into a movement that would save thousands. Didn't even know the woman's name until 6 months ago, when he recognized her story on the news. He just heard someone in trouble and ran toward danger instead of away from it. And that choice, that 20 seconds of courage changed everything. Sarah turned to Carlos, spoke directly to him with tears running down her face. You saved her. She built this. We expanded it. And now thousands of women are alive because you chose to act instead of walk away. Because you heard a scream and decided that helping mattered more than staying safe. That's your legacy, Carlos. That's what 20 seconds of courage created. An entire movement. Thousands of lives saved. All because you did what you said anyone should do, but what most people don't. Carlos was crying now, couldn't speak. His daughter stood beside him, arm around his shoulders, crying too. Finally, he managed a few words, voice shaking with age and emotion. I just did what anyone should do. I heard someone who needed help. How could I not help? And that's exactly the point, Sarah said, her voice breaking. You're right. Anyone should help when they hear a scream. But most people don't. They turn away. They mind their business. They tell themselves someone else will handle it. You didn't. You ran toward danger. And it changed everything. The applause lasted 5 minutes. Carlos eventually sat down, overwhelmed, while his daughter and grandkids hugged him. The rest of the evening was celebration. Survivor after survivor took the microphone to share their stories. Women who'd called the hotline terrified and found help. Women who'd used the Crossroads Initiative and gotten protection. Women who'd heard the podcast or read the book and felt less alone. There were video messages from women who couldn't attend but wanted to be part of the night. A teacher in Montana, a nurse in Florida, a lawyer in Oregon, all saved by the network. All living full lives because someone had believed them before they bled. One video in particular moved the room to tears. A woman in her 60s speaking from her living room. My name is Dr. Patricia Walsh. 40 years ago, I was stalked by a colleague. There was no word for it then, no law, no network. I survived by leaving my career, my city, my entire life. I became a therapist to help other survivors. But what you've built, what these women created, it's what I needed and never had. Thank you for making sure the next generation doesn't have to run away to survive. Another video showed a teenage girl, maybe 16, speaking nervously. I'm Emma Rodriguez. Last year, a boy at school wouldn't leave me alone. My parents called Silent Watch. Someone talked to the school. The boy was transferred. I got to stay and finish sophomore year. I'm going to be a junior next year. Thank you for letting me stay. A third video came from a woman in her 40s, speaking from what looked like an office. My name is Jennifer Michaels. I'm a social worker now because of this movement. 6 years ago, my coworker was stalking me. HR told me to work it out professionally. I called the Crossroads Initiative. They helped me document everything, got me a lawyer, sat with me through the harassment complaints. My stalker was fired and prosecuted. But more than that, I learned I could help others the way I was helped. I went back to school, got my MSW, and now I work with the Crossroads Initiative helping other women. That's what this movement does. It doesn't just save you, it shows you how to save others. A fourth video showed a young mother holding a toddler. I'm Maria Santos. 3 years ago, my ex-husband violated his restraining order 17 times. 17 times I called police. 17 times they said there wasn't enough evidence to arrest him. Then I found Silent Watch. They assigned 2 volunteers who escorted me everywhere for 3 months. My ex saw them, saw that I wasn't alone anymore. He finally left me alone. My daughter is safe. I'm safe. And last month, I started volunteering with Silent Watch myself, because someone showed up for me when the system wouldn't. The statistics were staggering when laid out together, but the stories were what mattered. Each number was a name, a face, a woman who woke up this morning because a community had protected her. After the video testimonials, there was one more surprise. Sarah walked back to the podium, this time with her son Marcus beside her. The 10-year-old boy looked nervous but determined, wearing a button-down shirt that was already coming untucked. Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. This is my son, Marcus. He's named after the man who believed me when no one else did. Marcus, do you want to tell everyone what you told me this morning? The boy looked out at 500 faces, swallowed hard, then spoke in a clear voice. My mom tells me stories about when she was scared, about the man who wouldn't leave her alone, about Aunt Rachel who helped her, and about Uncle Marcus who showed up. He paused, looked up at his mom, who nodded encouragingly. I don't understand everything about what you all do, but I know you help people who are scared. And when I grow up, I want to help people too, like my mom does, like Aunt Rachel and Aunt Amanda and Aunt Nicole do. He looked back at the audience. My teacher says that heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's hard. So thank you for being heroes. And I hope I can be one too someday. The room exploded in applause. People were standing, crying, clapping until their hands hurt. This was the future. This was why they'd built what they'd built. So that the next generation would grow up in a world where protection was normal, where belief was expected, where community showed up. Sarah hugged her son, whispered something in his ear that made him smile. Then she looked out at the crowd. That's the point, isn't it? We don't do this work so our children will have to. We do it so they'll grow up seeing it as normal, so they'll grow up believing that when someone says they're scared, you listen, you believe, you help. That's the legacy. Not just the women we saved, but the world we're building where fewer women need saving in the first place. Near the end of the evening, they showed a video compilation, set to music, showing the growth of the movement over 10 years. The original viral video, news clips, podcast episodes, book signings, graduations and weddings and births, lives lived fully because fear didn't have the final word. The video ended with text on screen. For every woman who needed help and found it, for every survivor who became an advocate, for every advocate who became a leader, for every community that chose to protect its own. This is your legacy. Keep building it. As people filed out, hugging and exchanging contact information, and promising to stay connected, the 4 women stood together near the stage: Rachel, Sarah, Amanda, and Nicole. The core, the foundation, the sisters who'd built something that would outlive them all. They didn't say much, didn't need to, just stood there together, letting the weight of what they'd accomplished settle in. 10 years, thousands of women, 0 deaths. That was victory. That was legacy. That was proof that community protection works when people choose to show up. 6 months after the gala, on a spring morning, Sarah got a call that would close one more circle. The voice on the other end was tentative, female, young. Is this Sarah Mitchell, the director of the Crossroads Initiative? Yes, this is Sarah. How can I help you? My name is Lily. I'm 18, and I'm being followed by someone. I saw your book, I heard your story, and I need help. Sarah felt something click into place, the cycle continuing, the work never ending, but always mattering. Tell me everything, Sarah said. And Lily, first thing you need to know is that I believe you. Second thing is that you're not alone anymore. She heard Lily start to cry with relief. You believe me? I do, and we're going to make sure you're safe. As Sarah took notes, creating a safety plan, connecting Lily to local advocates, she thought about that night 10 years ago when she'd said those same words to Rachel, when she'd been the terrified girl needing help. Now she was the one providing it. That was the legacy. Not the statistics or the laws or the media attention, but this, the passing forward of protection, the infinite chain of women saving women who then save others. After the call, Sarah looked at the photo on her desk. The four of them at the gala: Rachel, Sarah, Amanda, Nicole, arms around each other, smiling. Not because they'd forgotten what had happened to them, but because they'd transformed it into something that mattered. She picked up her phone, texted the group chat they'd maintained for 10 years, just took a call from a young woman being stalked, got her connected to resources, made sure she's safe. This work matters. We matter. Rachel responded first. Always will. Then Amanda. That's legacy. One woman at a time. Then Nicole. Keep building it. We're not done yet. Sarah smiled, put her phone down, turned to the next case file on her desk. A woman in Texas, a woman in Maine, a woman in California, each one needing the same thing: belief, protection, proof that their fear was valid and their life was worth saving. The work would never end. There would always be more predators, more failures, more women falling through cracks. But there would also always be survivors choosing to become advocates, advocates choosing to become leaders, leaders choosing to train others to lead. That was how movements sustain themselves, not through individuals, but through infinite replication of care. 10 years after that November night at the Crossroads Diner, the world looked different in small but meaningful ways. 15 states had better stalking laws. 37 cities had functioning victim advocacy programs. 50 states had silent watch chapters. Thousands of women had been protected. But more than that, a model existed now, proof that community protection works, that believing women before they bleed saves lives, that the gap between when danger is obvious and when law can act can be filled by people who choose to show up. Rachel Rivers ran a bookstore where survivors could find stories that reflected their pain and their triumph. Lived a quiet life with Maria, no longer defined by trauma, but informed by it. Sarah Mitchell ran a national initiative, raised 2 kids, testified before legislators, and answered calls from terrified women who needed someone to believe them. Built a career from ruins, found purpose in pain. Amanda Torres directed a trauma therapy practice, raised her children with the kind of love she'd had to learn to trust, helped survivors heal through methods she'd developed from her own recovery, proved that love after trauma was possible and beautiful. Nicole Chen ran operations for a tech giant, mentored women in male-dominated spaces, lived single by choice, and showed the world that completeness comes in many forms, chose herself every day and made no apologies for it. And Carlos Martinez, 77 years old, retired from cooking, volunteering with his local Silent Watch chapter as a driver for escorts, still doing what he'd always done, showing up when someone needed help. Never for recognition, just because it was right. On the 10-year anniversary of the viral video, Mrs. Patterson, who'd recorded that original 30 seconds, now 81, and sharp as ever, posted an update video. She stood in front of the Crossroads Diner, the neon sign still flickering behind her. 10 years ago, I filmed a moment that changed the world. Or maybe it just showed the world what was already happening. Women protecting women, communities taking care of their own, and I want you to know it's still happening. Every day, in every state, the work continues. The video got 20 million views in 48 hours. The comments section was different this time. Not just stories of trauma, but stories of protection, of calling the hotline and finding help, of neighbors organizing escort services, of communities implementing the Crossroads model. Progress, measurable, real. The Crossroads Diner still stood on Route 44, weathered but standing, like all things that survive. Still served coffee and pie to travelers passing through, truckers making their routes, locals who'd been coming for decades. Carlos had finally retired fully at 74, his knees no longer able to handle the long shifts, his hands starting to shake from age and hard use. But his legacy hung on the wall behind the counter where everyone could see it. A framed photo of him with Rachel, Sarah, Amanda, and Nicole taken at the gala. A plaque underneath reading, Carlos Martinez, who heard a scream and ran toward danger. This is where courage begins. The current manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd been a regular for years before taking over, kept the photo polished and the story alive, would tell new employees about the night that changed everything, about the waitress who was stalked, and the woman who believed her, and the man who'd saved them all without knowing it, about how this diner was part of something bigger than burgers and coffee, was part of a movement that said women deserved to be believed before they were hurt. Late at night, when the diner was closed and the highway was quiet except for the occasional semi-rumbling past, the building held its stories. The booth where Rachel sat down across from Ryan, number 7, now marked with a small brass plate that said, "Reserved for Heroes." The counter where Sarah had poured coffee with shaking hands, where she'd whispered her desperate plea. The kitchen where Carlos had worked for decades, never knowing that his act of courage 24 years earlier had planted seeds that would grow into forests of protection. Buildings hold memory. Walls absorb the energy of what happens within them. And this building held the memory of the night when everything changed. When a waitress was believed before she was hurt. When a stalker faced accountability before he escalated. When a system that failed was bypassed by a system that worked. When community showed up because institutions wouldn't. That memory would live as long as the diner stood. And the movement it sparked would live far longer. Because movements don't end when the founders step back. They continue through the people they trained, who train others still. An infinite chain of protection spreading across states and years and generations. A legacy that grows with each life saved, each woman believed, each time someone chooses to run toward danger instead of away from it. 10 years, thousands of women saved, not a single death among those protected. But more than numbers, a shift in consciousness, a model for what's possible when communities decide that women's fear is valid before violence proves it, when belief comes before blood, when protection is preventative instead of reactive. That was the true legacy of the Silent Watch. Not just the women saved, but the blueprint for how to save them. Available to anyone. Replicable anywhere. Proof that change is possible when people choose to show up. And somewhere tonight, in 50 states across America, women are making that choice. Answering hotlines, providing escorts, filing restraining orders, sitting in courtrooms, standing between danger and the vulnerable. Doing what Rachel did, what Sarah does, what Amanda and Nicole and thousands of others have done. Showing up, believing, protecting. That's the movement. That's the mission. That's the promise. I believe you. You're not alone. And we will protect you. Simple words. Revolutionary truth. The foundation of everything that matters. And the legacy continues. Woman by woman, life by life, one act of courage at a time.